Chapter 221. He Can't Perform. The door closed firmly behind Tristan and the pack healer. Erik Blackwood stood alone in the guest room, staring down at the fever-stricken woman who had somehow become his responsibility. Emma Chase looked terrible, her face flushed crimson, hair matted with sweat, her breathing shallow and quick. "This is ridiculous," Erik muttered, running a hand through his own hair in frustration. The healer's instructions echoed in his mind. Physical cooling would reduce her fever fastest. Erik glanced at the basin of warm water and soft cloths the healer had prepared before leaving. There was no avoiding it. With Emma delirious and burning up, he had no choice. "So troublesome," he growled, approaching the bed. If it weren't for Roman and Scarlett, he wouldn't bother with this northern she-wolf at all. What had she done to deserve his personal attention? Nothing. Yet here he was, playing nursemaid in the middle of the night. Emma whimpered in her sleep, calling for her mother again. Erik's expression hardened. He wasn't gentle by nature and had never done such detailed work before. Caring for the sick wasn't exactly part of being a feared European alpha. With clinical efficiency, he began removing her clothes. There was nothing sensual about the task. It was merely necessary. Each garment he removed revealed more feverish skin, but Erik remained detached, his amber eyes cold and focused. When she was completely undressed, he wrung out the first cloth and began methodically wiping her burning skin. Starting with her face, he worked his way down, his movements mechanical and impersonal. "This would be much easier if you weren't so damn fragile," he muttered to her unconscious form. His wolf simmered with annoyance beneath his skin. This wasn't how an alpha of his stature should be spending his time. As the healer had promised, the physical cooling worked quickly. Gradually, Emma's breathing steadied and the frightening heat began to dissipate from her skin. Erik continued the treatment until her temperature felt close to normal. When he was finished, Erik looked at the pile of abandoned clothes on the floor. The thought of dressing her again, manipulating her limp limbs into her clothing, was simply too much after the night he'd had. "Enough," he decided, pulling the blanket up to cover her naked form. Without a backward glance, Erik left the room, his wolf still bristling with irritation. He'd done more than enough for this troublesome she-wolf. The sun was already beginning to rise when he finally went to his own room. Roman owed him for this, he thought grimly as exhaustion finally claimed him. The next morning, Emma's eyes fluttered open. Her head felt clearer, the fever having broken overnight. She stretched under the cool sheets, grateful that the dizziness and confusion had passed. Then she froze. Something felt wrong. Different. She glanced down at herself, lifting the blanket slightly. Her eyes widened in shock. She was completely naked. A hysterical scream erupted from her throat, echoing throughout the villa and beyond. Outside, startled birds scattered from the trees, their wings flapping frantically against the morning sky. Emma clutched the blanket to her chest, her mind racing. What happened last night? The last thing she remembered was feeling dizzy, then nothing but fragmented fever dreams. Her wolf whimpered beneath her skin, equally confused and distressed. "Oh my God," she gasped, her voice trembling. "Oh my God, no!" The persistent vibration of my phone pulled me from a deep sleep. With bleary eyes, I patted around the bed, noticing Roman was no longer beside me. Where was that phone? After frantic searching, I finally spotted it halfway under the bed, buzzing insistently. Emma's name flashed across the screen. "Emma," I answered, my voice still thick with sleep. Just as I spoke, Roman pushed open the bedroom door, carrying a tray with what looked like freshly prepared herbs. I barely had time to acknowledge him before Emma's voice came through the phone, not speaking, but sobbing. "Emma, what's wrong?" I sat up straighter, instantly alert. Her sobs intensified. I think something happened to me." My heart rate doubled. "What? Are you hurt? Should I call the pack enforcers?" Then I remembered where she was staying. Wait, how could anything bad happen when you're with Erik? That's literally the safest place in the European territories. "My clothes are all gone," Emma choked out between sobs. I froze, completely shocked. My mind went blank for a solid 5 seconds. After everything I'd witnessed by Roman's side, territory wars, assassination attempts, pack betrayals, this revelation left me utterly speechless. "What do you mean?" I finally managed, still struggling to process her words. Roman set down the tray and looked at me with concern, his ice blue eyes questioning. Emma's voice trembled as she clarified, "I don't know what happened. I just know I'm not wearing anything right now." A sudden realization hit me. If a she-wolf and an alpha were together and she ended up naked, there was really only one explanation. "You two moved so fast," I exclaimed before I could stop myself. Roman's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "It took Roman and me years to get to that point," I continued, thinking out loud. "You and Erik have barely met a few times." Emma's crying intensified. "That's not helping, Scarlett." "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I'm just surprised. Are you okay? Was he gentle? I don't remember anything," Emma wailed. "I had a fever last night, and now I've woken up like this. What am I supposed to think?" I tried to sound calm and reassuring. "Maybe there's a misunderstanding. Perhaps he had to cool you down because of the fever." "Why would that require removing all my clothes?" Emma demanded, her voice rising with hysteria. "And then not putting them back on?" I had no good answer for that. I glanced at Roman, who had settled on the sofa and was preparing the healing herbs, though I could tell he was listening intently. "I can't believe you're defending him," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "I'm your closest friend and you're taking his side?" "I'm not taking sides," I insisted. "I'm just trying to understand. I've probably lost my virtue," Emma interrupted with another sob. "And you're taking his side." I panicked, desperate to calm her down. "He can't perform," I blurted out. There was sudden, complete silence on the other end of the line. I looked up to see Roman staring at me in shock, his hands frozen over the herbs, his ice blue eyes wide with disbelief. Oh no, what had I just said? I stopped crying abruptly, the phone pressed tightly against my ear. "Scarlett, what did you just say?" I asked in disbelief. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Maybe he can't perform," Scarlett amended, her voice dropping to a whisper. It's something I've heard. Erik is known for looking but not touching when it comes to beautiful she-wolves." My mind raced with this new information. Could it be true? "How do you know this?" I pressed, suddenly curious despite my predicament. "It's common knowledge," Scarlett insisted, though something in her tone suggested she was backtracking. "Ask anyone from the European territories." I frowned, considering this revelation. "Maybe those she-wolves weren't attractive enough?" "Trust me," Scarlett replied quickly. "They had long legs and slim waists, much better figures than yours, if he didn't respond to them." I nodded slowly to myself, clutching the blanket tighter around my naked body. So he must have problems in that area. It made sense in a way. It explained why he might have undressed me for medical purposes, but nothing else happened. Maybe his coldness and aggression were compensation for his inadequacies. The bedroom door suddenly swung open, and I looked up in terror. Erik Blackwood stood in the doorway, his face a mask of barely contained fury. His amber eyes flashed dangerously, and his expression looked as though he could devour someone whole. I met his terrifying gaze, my entire body freezing in fear. The phone slipped from my nerveless fingers, falling onto the blanket. I swallowed nervously, my throat suddenly bone dry. Had he heard what I said? Wait, I hadn't really said anything, had I? It was Scarlett who made the claim about his abilities. His amber eyes flashed again, making my wolf cower instinctively beneath my skin. Chapter 222, The Cold Reception at Shadow Valley. The phone call with Emma suddenly cut off, leaving me staring at my screen in confusion. "Emma?" I called out, pressing the phone closer to my ear as if that would somehow reconnect us. I quickly tried calling her back, once, then twice, but each attempt went straight to voicemail. A knot of worry formed in my stomach. Had Erik overheard our conversation? What would he do? Roman approached and gently took the phone from my hands. "Give her some time. If Erik heard what you said, they both need a moment." I winced, suddenly feeling guilty. "I shouldn't have said that about him." "No, you shouldn't have," Roman agreed, his tone mild but his eyes reflecting amusement. He reached for a small container on the nightstand and extracted a bitter-smelling herb tablet. "Here, take this before breakfast. It will help with your healing." I grimaced as I took the tablet, the bitter taste making me wrinkle my nose in disgust. "It's horrible." True to form, Roman immediately followed it with my favorite moonberry candy, the sweetness quickly masking the medicinal bitterness. His thoughtfulness made Cora purr contentedly beneath my skin. "You're becoming like Aiden," Roman remarked, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, gossiping about others. I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment. I was just trying to calm Emma down. Besides, I've only ever discussed that with Natalie, and we were just speculating. "Speculating about Erik's private matters," Roman emphasized, his ice blue eyes glinting with warning. "Fine," I sighed. "I promise not to talk about it again." Roman helped me get dressed, his movements careful and gentle, mindful of my still healing injuries. Even such simple acts of care made my heart swell with affection for him. How different he was now from the aloof alpha brother I'd grown up with. Once dressed, we headed downstairs where pack housekeeper Wilson was waiting in the entrance hall. The older beta wolf bowed respectfully as we approached, his demeanor as formal as ever. "Alpha Roman, Miss Scarlett," Wilson greeted us. "I must inform you that Sarah Winter is waiting outside the main gate." My steps faltered at the mention of that name. Sarah Winter, my biological mother who had never truly accepted me. Roman's expression darkened instantly. "How long has she been there?" "Nearly an hour, sir," Wilson replied. "She's approximately a kilometer from the compound." Roman's jaw tightened, a murderous glint entering his eyes. His wolf Logan stirred beneath his skin, his alpha power rippling through the air around us. "If her presence will upset Scarlett, perhaps we should deal with her permanently," Roman suggested, his voice deceptively calm despite the clear threat in his words. "Who came?" I asked, though I'd heard perfectly well the first time. I just needed a moment to process this unwelcome development. "Sarah Winter, Miss Scarlett," Wilson repeated patiently. I felt a cold detachment wash over me. Of course she would come now, not out of maternal love, but because Grace needed something. Her timing was too convenient to be coincidence. "Let her wait if she wants to," I said coldly, surprised by the ice in my own voice. "I have no intention of meeting her." Roman and Wilson exchanged a meaningful glance that I pretended not to notice. I knew that look. It meant Roman had silently communicated something that Wilson understood perfectly. "Let's have breakfast," Roman suggested, taking my arm gently. "You need to keep up your strength." As we headed toward the dining room, I noticed Wilson quietly departing with 2 female beta enforcers. Part of me wondered what would happen at the gates, but a larger part simply didn't care. The woman who had rejected me in favor of an adopted daughter had no right to my concern now. "Sarah's POV, I demand to see my daughter immediately," I shouted at the impassive guards blocking the entrance to Shadow Valley. The bitter wind cut through my inadequate clothing, sending violent shivers through my body. I hadn't expected to be left standing outside in the snow. In the Northern Territories, even enemies were given proper reception. "No one enters without authorization," the guard repeated for what felt like the 100th time. "Don't you understand who I am?" I demanded, my voice rising in frustration. "I am Scarlett's birth mother. I have every right to see her." The guards remained unmoved, their expressions cold and their wolves bristling beneath their skin. I could feel their power. These weren't ordinary beta wolves. The Thornpack's security was formidable. Movement caught my eye as 3 figures approached from inside the compound. One was an older beta male in a formal suit, obviously a high-ranking house staff, and 2 were female betas dressed in practical black clothing that couldn't hide their warrior physiques. "Mrs. Winter," the older beta addressed me with a cold politeness that didn't reach his eyes. "I am Wilson, head of house staff for Shadow Valley." "Please," I said, attempting to sound more diplomatic. "I need to speak with Scarlett. It's urgent family business." Wilson's gaze remained glacial. "Miss Scarlett has no family business with the Winter Pack." The wind picked up, driving icy snow against my exposed skin. My wolf whimpered beneath the surface, reacting to both the cold and the subtle threat emanating from the Thornpack wolves. Wilson made a small gesture, and the 2 female betas moved toward me. Their expressions were menacing, wolves' power rippling around them like a visible aura. I instinctively backed away, sensing danger. "I'm here to find my daughter. Scarlett, your pack's little princess is my biological daughter." My voice became desperate as I saw their intent in their eyes. "Scarlett won't forgive you if you harm her birth mother." Inwardly, I cursed myself for not having shown more favoritism to Scarlett when I had the chance. If I had known she held such an important position in the Thorn Pack, I would have cultivated that relationship more carefully. Now I was paying for that mistake. Without warning, the two female betas lunged forward and grabbed my arms. Before I could react, they bodily lifted and threw me outside the gates. I screamed as I hit the ground hard, landing awkwardly on my leg. Pain exploded through my kneecap, and my wolf howled in agony beneath my skin. "What are you doing?" I gasped, clutching my injured knee. To my horror, one of the female enforcers pulled out a silver bullet gun and aimed it directly at me. My blood turned into ice in my veins. "What are you doing?" I stammered, trembling uncontrollably. "You can't do this to me. I'm Scarlett's birth mother." Wilson stepped forward, his expression devoid of emotion. "Do you know why your son returned from Shadow Valley with a broken hand, Mrs. Winter?" "What?" I asked, genuinely confused by the sudden change in topic. His eyes narrowed. "Because he tried to hit our young lady." "Daniel is Scarlett's brother," I protested desperately. Wilson's eyes flashed dangerously, his wolf's power surging beneath the surface. "Related? It seems Mrs. Winter won't be returning to the Winter Pack safely today." He adjusted his cuffs with deliberate calmness, the gesture somehow more threatening than any overt aggression. "The little princess of the Thorn Pack, raised by both Alpha Liam and Luna Catherine, isn't someone just anyone can claim kinship with," Wilson continued, his voice cutting through the cold air. "You claim she's your biological daughter, then what is Luna Catherine to her?" His words struck me like physical blows. He had seen through my desperation, recognized that I was here not out of maternal love, but because I needed something from Scarlett. The humiliation burned hotter than the pain in my knee. "We are quite a why you've come, Mrs. Winter," Wilson said softly. "You need resources for Grace's treatment, don't you? How convenient that you suddenly remember your maternal connection to Miss Scarlett." I huddled in the snow, shivering from both cold and fear, utterly humiliated by the truth of his words. Roman and I had just finished breakfast and were heading toward the main entrance when his body suddenly tensed. Without warning, he pulled me against his chest, blocking my view of whatever he'd seen outside. "Roman? What?" I began, trying to peek around him. He silenced my question with a kiss, his lips capturing mine with unexpected intensity. Our mate bond hummed with energy, warmth spreading through my body despite the coldness of the day. I tried to pull away, confused by his sudden display of affection. I hadn't done anything to provoke this response from him. The last time the alpha had emerged so suddenly was when I'd actually done something to trigger him. Roman maintained the kiss until we had completely passed whatever he didn't want me to see. When he finally released me, his breathing was noticeably irregular, his ice-blue eyes darker than usual. I took a step back, but he immediately pulled me back into his embrace. "Why are you running away, little wolf?" he asked teasingly, his voice low and intimate. Chapter 223, Confrontations and Confessions. I felt Roman's arm tighten around my waist as the car pulled away from Shadow Valley. His ice-blue eyes had that dangerous gleam that I was starting to recognize all too well. "No, is he always this inappropriate regardless of the setting?" I protested, trying to push away from him. "I wasn't hiding. Let me go. We're in a car." Just as I spoke, I noticed the partition between us and Hunter beginning to rise. Hunter clearly had excellent situational awareness and zero intention of witnessing whatever was about to happen. "Hunter," I called out in desperation, but it was too late. The partition sealed with a soft click. I pushed against Roman's chest, feeling the solid wall of muscle beneath his shirt. "Let me go, I don't want to." "I won't hurt you," Roman promised, his voice dropping to that husky tone that sent shivers down my spine despite my protests. His breath was warm against my ear. "I know you're still healing." "Then let me go," I insisted, still struggling against his grip. His breathing became increasingly unsteady as I squirmed in his lap. His fingers tightened on my slender waist, not painfully, but firmly enough that I couldn't escape. "Little wolf, be good, he coaxed, and something in his tone made me panic even more. My heart raced as I realized I couldn't win this physical battle. Roman was simply too strong, and his alpha power was surging beneath his skin. I could feel it like electricity in the air around us. My last resort was the one thing I knew might stop him: tears. "No, I don't want to," I said, my voice cracking as tears welled up in my eyes. Roman froze, momentarily stunned by my emotional response. For a split second, I thought my strategy had worked. Then his lips captured mine in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened with hunger. Against my better judgment, my body responded to him. Cora, my wolf, purred beneath my skin, recognizing her mate. The familiar, steady presence of Roman, the safety I'd always associated with him, overwhelmed my resolve. Our mate bond hummed with intensity, a warm current flowing between us. His hands gentled, one sliding up to cup my face, thumb brushing away my tears. "I'm sorry," he murmured against my lips. "I didn't mean to frighten you." I pulled back slightly, meeting his gaze. The healer said I need time to heal properly. Roman nodded, pressing his forehead against mine. "I know, when I see you, it's hard to control myself." Despite everything, a small smile tugged at my lips. The mighty Roman thorn admitting he lacks control? His answering smile was both tender and predatory. "Only with you, little wolf. Only with you." I sat paralyzed on the bed, clutching the blanket so tightly around myself that my knuckles turned white. I was terrified of exposing even the slightest bit of skin in front of Erik Blackwood, who sat across from me in an armchair, casually smoking a cigar. His amber eyes never left my face, piercing and unreadable. The silence stretched between us, growing more oppressive with each passing second. Don't look at me like that. I'm scared." My voice caught on the word scared, betraying just how terrified I truly was. Back in the Northern Territories, I was known for my confidence. I wasn't afraid to speak my mind or stand my ground. But here, in this unfamiliar environment without my pack or my mother, I felt like a pup without its protection, small and utterly helpless. Erik's eyes were terrifying up close. Predatory wolf's eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light of the room. I felt as though he could tear me apart with just one look. "What am I not good at?" he asked suddenly, his voice deceptively calm. My heart stopped. He had heard. Of course he had heard what Scarlett and I were discussing. My wolf cowered beneath my skin, wanting to disappear completely. I don't," I stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. "Think carefully before speaking," Erik interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Otherwise." He didn't complete the threat. He didn't need to. The implication was clear enough, and it made my blood run cold. This was karmic retribution for all my years of gossiping. I was finally facing the consequences of my loose tongue, and with possibly the most dangerous alpha in all the territories. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." I apologized immediately, my voice growing increasingly small with each word. I was painfully aware that I had nothing on beneath this blanket. If he decided to punish me, I would have no dignity left at all. I silently vowed to the moon goddess that if I survived this encounter, I would never gossip about Erik Blackwood again. "What is it that I'm supposedly not good at?" Erik pressed again, his amber eyes flashing dangerously. I needed to redirect this conversation fast. "It's me who's not good. I'm not good at anything except being first at eating." I was willing to completely disparage myself if it meant escaping this situation with my life. Erik's lips curved into an amused smile as he observed my trembling form. "A glutton?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Despite finding his mouth and attitude incredibly annoying, I nodded vigorously. "Yes, exactly. That's me. A complete glutton." I had never felt so utterly humiliated discussing gossip about an alpha before, but if self-degradation was the price of survival, I'd pay it gladly. 10 minutes later, I found myself sitting at the dining table, facing an array of unfamiliar European foods. The spread was enormous, enough to feed several hungry wolves. Erik reclined in his chair across from me, one ankle resting on his knee in a pose of casual dominance. Without his suit jacket, his pack tattoos were more visible along his forearms, making him look even more dangerous and wild than before. "Can you finish it all?" he asked, his tone mocking. I looked at the mountain of food, then back at him, trying my best to appear pitiful. "I can't finish it." "So," Erik said, returning to his original question with relentless focus, "what were you and Scarlett discussing that wasn't good about me?" I was speechless. It was clear he wasn't going to let this topic drop. Normally chatty and quick with responses, I now chose silence like a cornered Omega wolf. I lowered my head, unable to meet his gaze. Something in my submission must have caught his interest, because I saw a flash of something in his cold eyes before he chuckled softly. "Eat then," he commanded, gesturing to the food. "I can't finish everything," I insisted, looking at the impossible amount of food. "Then would you rather go hungry?" Erik asked simply. I felt fury rise within me despite my fear. This alpha was truly perverse, either wanting to stuff me until I burst or starve me completely. What kind of twisted punishment was this? Sarah's POV. My face throbbed with pain as I pushed open the door to the winter pack house. The humiliation I had suffered at Shadow Valley still burned fresh in my mind, along with the agony of my injured knee. I limped into the entrance hall just as Rachel Thompson was heading upstairs with what appeared to be a steaming cup of black liquid. "What's that? Who's it for?" I demanded, immediately suspicious. With no reputable healers willing to make house calls to the winter pack anymore, yet another consequence of Roman Thorn's influence, I didn't trust whatever Rachel had managed to procure. Rachel paused on the stairs, turning to face me with a smirk. "What? You want to take this medicine too?" "Sorry, but it doesn't treat what your adopted daughter has." The casual reference to Grace as my adopted daughter made my jaw clench. Ever since the discovery that Scarlett was my biological child, Rachel had taken every opportunity to emphasize Grace's adoptive status. "What is that?" "Daniel doesn't need black liquid medication," I said, eyeing the container with distrust. "Do you know what side effects that could have on a wolf system?" Something in Rachel snapped. She stomped back down the stairs until she was face to face with me. "You talk about responsibility now?" she spat, her human eyes flashing with fury. One's nearly dead from silver poisoning, another almost crippled with damaged hands. We're at the desperate measures stage and you're concerned about responsibility? I tried to interject, but Rachel was on a rampage, her voice rising with each word. "Let me remind you how this pack fell apart," she continued, jabbing a finger uncomfortably close to my face. "Because you spoiled your adopted daughter so much, your son went to Scarlett's territory looking for trouble and nearly got killed by Roman." My wolf whimpered beneath my skin at the harsh truth of her words. "Don't blame Scarlett. It's because Grace hired rogue wolves to attack her years ago, and she retaliated," Rachel pressed on, merciless in her assessment. She squinted at my swollen face, a mocking smile appearing on her lips. "What happened to your face? Did you also go to Scarlett's healing center? Was it because of Grace, or are you after the benefits behind Scarlett too?" "Shut up," I sputtered, unable to form a more coherent response to her barrage. Rachel laughed cruelly. "Too bad you lost that big gold nugget." With that final blow delivered, she turned and continued up the stairs with the medicine, leaving me seething in the entrance hall. "What misfortune," I muttered to myself, rubbing my aching face. "What kinds of wolves are we dealing with nowadays?" Scarlett was bad enough with her sharp tongue, but Rachel is even worse with her human audacity. Chapter 224. The Truth Comes to Light. I climbed the stairs with the bitter herbal mixture, a smirk playing on my lips. That entitled she-wolf Sarah Winter had practically fallen apart at the seams when she returned from Shadow Valley. Her face swollen, her pride crushed, it was everything I'd hoped for. Pushing open the bedroom door with my hip, I found Daniel propped up against the pillows, his damaged hands resting uselessly on the blanket. Poor thing, so handsome yet so weak. "Here's your medicine," I said, thrusting the steaming cup toward him. "Only I can help you now. Your mother is absolutely useless." Daniel frowned, his eyes following me as I moved around the room. "Why do you always have to speak that way about my mother?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Because it's true. Your entire pack is falling apart, and she's still chasing after that ungrateful adopted daughter of hers." "Rachel," Daniel said, his voice suddenly serious. "I need to ask you something." I raised an eyebrow, helping him hold the cup since his hands were too damaged to grip it properly. "What?" "Was my mother really responsible for the rogue wolf attack on Scarlett years ago?" His eyes searched mine for truth. The question caught me off guard, but I recovered quickly. This was perfect, another wedge to drive into this family. "Why would you ask me that?" I smiled slyly. "Haven't you noticed that Alexander hasn't even come to see Grace anymore? Can't you tell?" Daniel's breathing quickened, his wolf mason stirring beneath his skin. "What do you mean?" Alexander passed by your door 3 days ago? I reminded him. Remember how cold he was? How he barely acknowledged you? He knows something, Daniel. Something about your precious sister and mother. That doesn't answer my question, Daniel pressed, wincing as he shifted his position. I laughed again, setting the empty medicine cup aside. Why do you care what I think? I'm just a human, after all. Just a tool you're using to produce an heir. That's not... Oh, please, I cut him off. Let's not pretend. I'm using you for your money, not out of any genuine affection. We both know that. The hurt in his eyes was delicious. Breaking down this family piece by piece was proving to be easier than I thought. I stood in the doorway of Grace's room, my face throbbing with pain and humiliation. She was sitting up in bed, her once beautiful features now gaunt with illness, her skin taking on the telltale silvery pallor of advanced silver poisoning. "Mother," Grace exclaimed, her pale blue eyes widening at the sight of my injured face. "What happened? Did you see Scarlett? Did she agree to help us?" The hope in her voice made my heart ache. I limped toward her bed and sat down heavily, the weight of my failure pressing down on me. "It's impossible," I said quietly. "We'll never get help from Scarlett." Grace's face crumpled. "But I need those herbs. Hazel Walsh said I have less than a week before it's too late." "I know, darling," I whispered, reaching out to stroke her platinum blonde hair, now brittle from the silver coursing through her body. But they wouldn't even let me see her. They threw me out like garbage, threatened me with silver bullets. "There must be someone else who can help," Grace insisted, clutching my hand with desperate strength. "We can't just give up." I looked into her frightened eyes and felt a question rise within me, one I'd been avoiding for too long. "Grace," I said carefully, "I need to ask you something important, and I need the truth." Her eyes immediately became guarded. "What is it? Did you frame Scarlett for stealing all those years ago? Did you orchestrate that rogue wolf attack against her?" Grace's eyes widened, then quickly narrowed. "Why would you ask me that? Of course not. I would never do something so terrible." Her denial was quick, too quick. After years of raising her, I knew when she was lying. "It's just," I continued, watching her reactions closely, "Alexander hasn't visited you in days. Doesn't that seem strange to you?" "He's busy," Grace said dismissively, though I could see the worry in her eyes. "He's preparing for the territory fighting tournament." "Let's call him," I suggested, pulling out my phone. "He should know about your condition anyway." Before Grace could protest, I dialed Alexander's number and put it on speaker. He answered after several rings. "Sarah." His voice was cold and distant, nothing like the warm, respectful tone he usually used with me. "Alexander, we have terrible news," I said, trying to ignore the chill his tone sent down spine. "Grace's silver poisoning has worsened. Hazel Walsh says she needs moon-blessed herbs within a week, or it will be too late. They cost over $500,000 per treatment." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "That's good news for you," Alexander finally replied, his voice emotionless. Grace gasped in shock, her face paling even further. "What do you mean?" I demanded. "Alexander, this is Grace we're talking about." "I don't want to be involved with Grace anymore," he stated flatly. "Not after what I've learned." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone in disbelief, then slowly turned to look at Grace. "What does he mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What has he learned?" Tears filled Grace's eyes. "I don't know," she insisted, shaking her head. "I swear I don't know." "Well, I can guess," came Rachel's mocking voice from the doorway. I turned to see her leaning against the frame, arms crossed over her chest, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. "What would you know about it?" I snapped. Rachel's smile widened. Alexander must have discovered Grace's plot against his former mate. After all, no matter how much an alpha loves a she-wolf, he wouldn't want to mark someone with such a malicious heart and silver-poisoned body. Grace flinched as if she'd been struck. "That's not true." I turned back to Grace, my patience wearing thin. "Is it true? Did you plot against Scarlett? Was the rogue wolf attack you're doing?" "No," Grace cried, tears streaming down her face. "I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do that." But even as she denied it, I could see the truth in her eyes. The daughter I had raised, the child I had favored over my own flesh and blood, had been lying to me all along. Scarlett's POV. The car pulled up to Roman's seaside villa, the Eastern Territory's winter wind blowing in from the ocean. I shivered slightly as we stepped out, unconsciously moving closer to Roman for warmth. Roman noticed my instinctive movement and smiled, pulling me into his embrace as we walked toward the entrance. His body radiated heat like a furnace, and I snuggled against him gratefully. "I'm hungry," I announced as we stepped inside the villa. "Can we have venison stew for lunch? The Eastern Territory version with those special herbs?" Roman's ice-blue eyes softened as he looked down at me. "Of course, you're starting to prefer our local dishes more and more." I hadn't really noticed the shift in my tastes, but he was right. I used to love spicy food, but lately I've been craving heartier dishes. "It's the winter," Roman said, though something in his tone suggested he might be thinking something else. "Wilson, please have the kitchen prepare venison stew for lunch." The pack housekeeper bowed respectfully. "Yes, Alpha. Would you like it prepared with the traditional blood sauce, Miss Scarlett? It's always been your favorite." Before I could answer, a powerful smell wafted from the kitchen area. The unmistakable scent of fresh deer blood being prepared for cooking. My stomach immediately clenched, and I covered my mouth with my hand. "What's wrong?" Roman asked, concern evident in his voice as he observed my reaction. "That smell," I mumbled through my fingers. "It's so heavy, metallic." Roman's brow furrowed. "But you've always enjoyed blood-rare venison. It's one of your favorites." "I know," I admitted, confused by my own reaction, "but today it smells unusually unpleasant, almost nauseating." Without hesitation, Roman turned to the housekeeper. "Have the venison well done instead. No blood sauce." The housekeeper's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "Of course, Alpha. Right away." As the housekeeper hurried off to relay the instructions to the kitchen staff, I couldn't help but notice how quickly Roman had acted to address my discomfort. His protectiveness warmed me from the inside, even as I wondered at my strange reaction to a scent I'd always enjoyed before. Chapter 225, Explosive News and Subtle Changes. I settled onto the comfortable sofa in the living room after Roman disappeared into his study. He'd received a phone call that seemed urgent, his expression shifting to that cold, calculating look that meant pack business required his attention. Wilson, our pack housekeeper, approached me with his usual dignified manner. His beta status didn't diminish his authoritative presence among the house staff. "Miss Scarlett, would you like fresh salmon for lunch?" he asked respectfully. "The pack hunters caught some this morning. You usually enjoy it daily." I immediately felt my stomach turn at the mere thought. No need. I really can't stand the smell. Wilson's eyebrows rose slightly. "But Miss Scarlett, it's extremely fresh. The hunters brought it in just—" I waved my hand dismissively, cutting him off. "I'm sure it's wonderful, but not today." I didn't bother explaining further. Lately, certain smells had become overwhelming, and fish was suddenly at the top of that list. Inside me, Cora grew uneasy at the mere mention of the scent. Wilson bowed slightly. "As you wish, Miss Scarlett." My phone rang, and I was relieved to see Emma's name flashing across the screen. "Emma, how are you feeling?" I answered eagerly. "Much better," she said, her voice back to its usual energetic tone. "But you won't believe what I just heard about the winter pack." I adjusted my position on the sofa. "Tell me everything." "Sarah Winter has been desperately borrowing money from wealthy she-wolves throughout the Northern Territories," Emma explained, her voice dropping to that gossipy whisper I knew so well. "She's literally begging door to door among the elite circles." Really? This caught my interest immediately. Sarah, who had always been obsessively concerned with maintaining her pristine reputation, reduced to begging? That's quite the fall from grace. "It's for Grace's treatment, of course," Emma continued. "But honestly, is the winter pack truly so poor they can't produce a few million?" I let out a dry laugh. "They likely are. No one knows better than me what the winter pack has endured recently." Roman's influence had systematically dismantled their resources, their connections, their standing. What they were experiencing was merely a drizzle compared to the storms Roman dealt with in the Eastern Territories, yet even this drizzle had completely shattered the once proud winter pack. "It's rather unfortunate," Emma remarked, though her tone suggested she didn't find it unfortunate at all. "Indeed," I agreed, equally insincere. "But wait," Emma's voice suddenly dropped even lower. "There's more explosive information. I leaned forward unconsciously. What is it? I heard that Grace Winter had a close relationship with the PAC's financial advisor, the same woman who bore Marcus's twins. I nearly dropped my phone. What? Jennifer Moore? What? Cora perked up beneath my skin, suddenly alert with interest. Yes, Emma confirmed excitedly. They were close friends, dining together, shopping together. Apparently, Jennifer entered the Winter PAC through Grace's connections and was secretly promoted by her. This is truly explosive, I said, trying to process the implications. If true, it meant Sarah had been blindly protecting someone who had betrayed her mate and PAC. The irony was almost too perfect. Sarah must be completely blind, Emma commented sarcastically, to treat Grace like a precious treasure while humiliating herself to save someone who's been disloyal. Is this information reliable? I asked, though PAC gossip usually contains seeds of truth. Emma hesitated. It's PAC gossip, but you know how these things work. There's usually some truth behind rumors that spread through PAC channels. True, I acknowledged. Emma's voice softened slightly. Also, these moon-blessed herbs Grace is taking might have some effect, but they probably won't save her life. What do you mean? Her condition is too deteriorated from the silver poisoning. She can't escape fate. This is clearly the moon goddess's will to take her. I was surprised by Emma's harsh words, though they mirrored my own thoughts. If the treatment failed, the Winter PAC would have wasted millions on nothing. And even if Grace survived, she would face a miserable existence with her wolf permanently suppressed by the silver in her system. I suddenly felt an uncomfortable tightness in my chest and placed my hand over my heart, rubbing gently. Scarlett? Are you okay? Emma asked. I'm fine, just a little discomfort. I heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to see Roman descending. His ice-blue eyes immediately locked onto my hand over my chest. Emma, I need to go. Roman's here, I said quickly. Of course. Call me later. I ended the call just as Roman reached me. His expression was concerned as he took in my posture. Are you feeling unwell? He asked, his voice gentle. I nodded. I might have caught a chill. My stomach feels a bit off. Without hesitation, Roman lifted me from the sofa and placed me on his lap as he sat down. His hand felt cool against my forehead as he checked for fever. No temperature, he murmured, relief evident in his tone. I suddenly felt a strong craving wash over me. Roman, do we have sweet berry compote? His lips curved into a knowing smile. It's already being prepared in the kitchen. How did you know I'd want that? Roman's eyes softened. Our mate bond. I felt your craving earlier. The sound of the front door opening interrupted our moment. Aiden Walsh strolled in, his eyes widening at our intimate position. Why are we torturing unmated wolves with this display now? He complained dramatically. Is everything in the Eastern Territories taken care of? I instinctively tried to get up from Roman's lap, but his hand firmly guided my head back against his chest. I felt rather than saw the cold glare he gave Aiden. Aiden immediately took a step back, his wolf cowering beneath his skin. Fine, I see you don't need my concern at all, Shadow King. Lunch was served in the elegant dining room overlooking the winter sea. Despite the special fermented berry pudding prepared for me, I found my appetite lacking. I picked at it half-heartedly, suddenly not as hungry as I'd thought. This is strange, Aiden remarked, eyeing me from across the table. You now like fermented food? I thought you preferred spicy venison stew. I frowned, feeling inexplicably defensive. Can't I simply desire different food? Aiden opened his mouth to respond, then closed it, looking momentarily stunned. Something flickered in his eyes, a realization perhaps, before he blinked it away, his wolf's instincts suddenly alert for reasons neither of us could articulate. Darian's POV. I thumbed through the investigative documents Jake Turner had just handed me, my lips curving into a satisfied smile. The information contained within was better than I dared hope. This is interesting, I remarked, feeling my amber eyes gleam with satisfaction. Ryan Hayes shifted uncomfortably on the nearby bed where he was recovering from his silver bullet wound. His face was still pale from the extraction procedure we'd performed yesterday. What's interesting? He asked warily. Why are you smiling like that? Are you still upset about not getting what you wanted from Roman? I shot him a look that made him flinch. James Amber apparently has another son besides Alexander, likely from a different she-wolf. Ryan's eyes widened in shock. What? That's impossible. James has always been known throughout the Northern Territories for his good reputation and faithfulness to his Luna. Apparently not, I said, enjoying the moment, and this will create quite the chaos in the Amber Pack hierarchy, especially with Alexander's recent estrangement from Grace. I turned to Jake, who stood waiting for further instructions. Send both the documents and this newly discovered wolf to the Amber family compound. Tell James, no thanks needed. Ryan struggled to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at his healing wound. Darian, that's equivalent to throwing a wolfsbane bomb at the Amber family. James and Victoria have always had a stable mate bond. I shrugged, unconcerned with their domestic harmony. Ryan studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing with sudden understanding. You want Scarlett to be grateful to you, don't you? You're trying to deal with Alexander to please her. I didn't bother denying it. That little wolf should indeed be grateful. Is her gratitude really necessary? Ryan asked cautiously. Roman has already squeezed both the Amber and Winter families through his shadow organization. At the mention of Roman's name, I felt my wolf surge beneath my skin. I fixed Ryan with a stern look that made him shrink back against his pillows. When you recover, I'll throw you into the lake to swim 20 kilometers too. Ryan looked confused. What? Why? What did I? Wake up your wolf brain and wash your mouth, I growled, my wolf simmering dangerously beneath my skin at the mere mention of my rival. Was the mere thought of Roman Thorne with Scarlett, my promised mate, was enough to make my blood boil. Ryan clearly needed to learn when to keep certain names out of his mouth. Chapter 226, Choosing Paths and Breaking Ties. I stood by the window, watching snow fall outside. In 2 days, I would return to the Eastern Territories for urgent shadow organization business. Usually I'd take Scarlett with me without question, especially with Darian Morrison's attempts to claim her. Hunter, I called to my trusted beta standing by the door. Hunter Stone straightened immediately. Yes, Alpha. Guard must be tight. No one is allowed in. I ordered firmly, my wolf Logan stirring protectively. Scarlett needs rest, and I won't risk her safety. Hunter nodded seriously. I understand, Alpha. I'll oversee security myself. Aiden Walsh chuckled from his position against the wall. Darian's still in Shadow Valley anyway. I doubt he'll make it here. I shot him a cold glance that silenced his laughter instantly. Previously, you all thought he was in the neutral territory, I reminded him sharply, recalling how Darian had appeared without detection, his wolf somehow evading our guards. The memory made my jaw clench. I wouldn't underestimate him again. Triple the perimeter guards, I told Hunter, and have 2 betas outside Scarlett's door at all times. Hunter's eyes showed determination. We won't fail you, Alpha. I turned back to the window, my reflection staring back. Logan's ice-blue eyes flickered in my own, our shared concern for our mate evident. Third person's POV. Scarlett slept until 4 in the afternoon. When she finally woke, she made her way to the living room and settled onto the couch. A servant immediately brought her a thick blanket. The pack phone rang, breaking the silence. The housekeeper, Wilson, answered promptly. Thorn Pack residence, he stated formally. His expression darkened as he listened. I'm afraid Miss Winters is not available, Mrs. Winter, he said coldly. Scarlett's head snapped up at Sarah Winter's name, her emerald eyes narrowing. Sarah had found the pack house number after being blocked from Scarlett's mobile. Mrs. Winter still hasn't learned her lesson, daring to harass our young Alpha's mate, Wilson said disapprovingly. No, I will not disturb her. He turned to Scarlett. Mrs. Winter insists it's urgent pack business about Grace's condition. Scarlett's expression hardened instantly. Have the pack communications change the number, she ordered coldly, her wolf Cora bristling beneath her skin. Wilson nodded with approval. Yes, Miss Scarlett, right away. As the housekeeper left, Scarlett stared into the fire. The Winter Pack now knew she had grown up in the Thorn Pack and clearly hoped to gain benefits. They won't get a single thing from me, she whispered, her voice hard with resolve. At the Winter Pack house, Sarah Winter slammed down the phone in fury, her face flushed with anger. They hung up on me, she exclaimed in disbelief. Rachel Thompson sat nearby, gnawing noisily on a deer bone. Her eyes gleamed with malicious amusement. What did you expect? Rachel asked mockingly. That she'd welcome her loving mother? Sarah turned her fury on Rachel. I demand the money the healing center transferred to you. It belongs to our pack. Rachel laughed coldly. I really must be seeing ghosts. The money's in my account and it's impossible to get it back. She stood up straight. As for this pack, you can say whatever you want, but you don't control me. Sarah stepped forward aggressively. Don't you dare give those herbs to Daniel. We need them for Grace. Rachel merely rolled her eyes, completely immune to Sarah's wolf dominance due to her human status. Watch me, she taunted, grabbing a steaming mug and heading upstairs. She paused at the bottom step. Your wolf tricks don't work on me, remember? That's the problem with you wolves. You rely too much on your animal sides. Daniel Winter woke to the sound of a mug slamming onto his bedside table. Rachel stood over him, her expression hard. This is the last bowl of medicine I'm giving you, she announced flatly. Whether you drink it or not doesn't matter. Whether your hands heal is up to fate now. Daniel struggled to sit up, wincing in pain. What do you mean? Where are you going? Rachel was packing clothes into a suitcase. I'm taking our son and leaving, she stated simply. Daniel's face turned red with anger, his wolf barely contained. You can't just leave. What about the pack resources I transferred to you? Rachel laughed bitterly. That's for raising the child, of course. You don't expect it back, do you? She zipped the suitcase decisively. I'm tired of this household. Your mother treats me like dirt, your sister is dying and stealing all attention, and you're too weak to stand up to any of them. Daniel growled furiously. The pack business has collapsed. My father withdrew what resources remained. You can't take that money. Watch me, Rachel replied calmly. After leaving Daniel's room, Rachel went to Grace's chambers, entering without knocking. Grace startled at the intrusion, her eyes wide with fear. Stop the act when no one else is around, Rachel laughed. You don't need to pretend with me. Grace clutched her blanket tighter. What do you want? I'm leaving, and you can have this broken pack. Who wants it anyway? Rachel announced. Grace's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What about the money? What about my brother? Your brother? How shameless. Shame. Rachel's voice dripped with contempt. He's Scarlett's real brother, but she doesn't want him. Picking up what she doesn't want is really your style. She moved closer. Besides, Daniel now has a legal heir, his son. You're irrelevant in the pack hierarchy, just a dying she-wolf with silver in her veins. Sarah burst into the room, her face contorted with rage. You can't leave. That money belongs to the pack. Rachel shouldered past her with the baby carrier. Try and stop me, she challenged. Despite Sarah's hysterical arguing, Rachel left with both the child and the money, leaving the winter pack devastated. Sarah collapsed against the wall, tears streaming down her face. After several minutes, she dragged herself to Daniel's room. What kind of woman have you gotten involved with? She demanded brokenly. Daniel stared at the ceiling, his expression hollow. Enough, Mother. He turned to face her, his eyes suddenly direct. Was that rogue wolf attack really orchestrated by Grace to harm Scarlett? Sarah fell silent, her wolf whimpering beneath her skin. Well, Daniel pressed. I don't know for certain, Sarah finally whispered. Daniel laughed bitterly. You know? You've always known? He shifted painfully. What do you plan to do now? What can we do? Wait for Grace to recover from the silver poisoning first, Sarah replied weakly. Daniel's expression showed clear skepticism. With what money? Rachel took everything I had, and Father's withdrawn the rest. His eyes searched his mother's face. Mom, Scarlett is your real daughter. We've been favoring Grace all these years because we thought Scarlett was bullying her. If Scarlett's hostility toward her stemmed from that orchestrated attack, what does that make Grace? Sarah was speechless, her breath catching in her throat. I sat across from Hazel Walsh, enjoying dinner since Roman hadn't returned yet. Hazel was on the phone with Emma, looking amused. She says she's terrified in the European territories with Erik, she told me, covering the mouthpiece. When Hazel passed me the phone, I heard Emma's frantic voice immediately. Scarlett, you need to get me out of here, she pleaded. This wolf is terrifying. Emma, calm down, I said. Roman said your situation is complicated. Since Erik is willing to help investigate, you're actually safest with him right now. Safest? Emma scoffed. You think being with a wolf battling through silver bullet confrontations is safe? Before I could respond, I felt a gentle pulse through my mate bond, Roman reaching out to me. His presence in my mind felt warm and reassuring, instantly calming my wolf Cora, who purred contentedly beneath my skin. "Where are you, little wolf?" Roman's thoughts came clearly. "I'll pick you up after finishing business with the Shadow Organization." The simple question made my heart warm. I quickly sent him my location through our bond, feeling a rush of affection I was still getting used to expressing freely. "I need to go, Emma," I said. "Roman's coming to pick me up." "Fine. Abandon me in my hour of need," Emma sighed dramatically. I laughed, promising to call her tomorrow. As I waited for Roman, I couldn't help reflecting on how much had changed so quickly. From pretending not to love him to being his mate, the journey had been tumultuous, but worth it. Chapter 227, Shocking News and Confrontation. I put down my phone after saying goodbye to Emma, feeling slightly guilty for abandoning her in her dramatic crisis with Erik. Before I could dwell on it further, a server approached our table with a magnificent bowl of ice cream topped with fresh berries. "I didn't order this," I said, looking up in confusion. Hazel smiled. "I did. You've been eyeing the dessert menu since we sat down." The ice cream looked divine, 3 scoops of different flavors with moonberry sauce drizzled over the top. Roman rarely let me have desserts like this, always concerned about my health and the effect of too much sugar on my wolf senses. "Thank you," I said gratefully, picking up my spoon. "Roman would never allow this." "That's why we're enjoying it while he's not here," Hazel winked. As I savored the first spoonful, I asked, "So what else did Emma say?" She seemed quite worked up about Erik. Hazel's expression shifted to one of barely contained excitement. "Oh, that's nothing compared to the latest drama. Rachel Thompson ran away with the money. The entire winter pack is in turmoil now." The ice cream caught in my throat, and I started coughing violently. "What?" I choked out between coughs. "It's true," Hazel confirmed, handing me a glass of water. "Rachel took all of Daniel's money, everything he transferred to her account. And apparently, Marcus Winter withdrew the pack's remaining funds when he found out about his new twins." I took a sip of water, trying to process this information. The whole pack? But they were one of the wealthiest packs in the Northern Territories. "Not anymore," Hazel said, leaning forward. "Rachel emptied their last reserves. Now the entire winter pack has one with a useless hand, one sick with silver poisoning, and one who doesn't earn money." "Isn't that the moon falling from the sky?" She looked genuinely disappointed. I was really looking forward to extracting millions from them for Grace's treatment. What a wasted opportunity. I struggled to comprehend the winter pack's dramatic downfall. How could they possibly have become so poor so quickly? "Roman's blockade weakened them significantly," Hazel explained. "Then Daniel's poor business decisions, Marcus's new family expenses, and now Rachel's theft. It was the perfect storm." We exchanged knowing glances. "Grace won't survive this, will she?" I asked quietly. Hazel shook her head. "Not a chance. The silver poisoning is too advanced, and without those herbs." She let the sentence hang. "Karma," I murmured, thinking of how Grace had orchestrated the rogue wolf attack that nearly killed me years ago. "Exactly," Hazel agreed, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "The once proud Winter Pack is now the subject of gossip throughout the Northern Territories. Sarah Winter, who used to look down on everyone, is being mocked by all the wealthy she-wolves she approached for loans." The thought brought a small smile to my face. I wouldn't wish death on Grace, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction of seeing the family that had rejected me finally facing consequences for their actions. I finished my ice cream as we continued discussing the winter pack's downfall. After the server cleared our plates, Hazel glanced at her watch. "Roman hasn't called through your mate bond yet," she observed. "Want to go shopping?" I checked the time myself, suddenly realizing something. "Connor hasn't called you either? That's unusual. He's usually so possessive." Hazel's smile faltered slightly. "The Reynolds family is having a pack gathering today. And you weren't invited," I finished, understanding immediately. Connor's mother and aunt had never approved of Hazel, despite her skills as a healer. They considered her beneath their son's station. "I'm fine," Hazel said, though I could hear the bitterness in her voice. "I'm used to it." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Their loss." Hazel squeezed back, grateful for my support. Actually, I wanted to tell you, I bought a den in Moonlight Valley. Really? I was surprised. Hazel had been living with Connor in their territory, in a nice house just outside the main pack house, but I thought you were settled with Connor. I need my own space, she said evasively. Does Connor know? I asked carefully. When Hazel shook her head, I felt a prickle of concern. Something was clearly wrong in their relationship. I opened my mouth to ask more, but before I could, a mocking voice interrupted us. Isn't that Daniel Winters' sister, Scarlett Winters? We both turned to see Jessica Miller and Ayla Quinn standing nearby. Jessica looked uncomfortable, but Ayla's expression was pure contempt. I immediately recognized her as part of Grace's social circle from the Northern Territories. Both Hazel and I tensed, our expressions darkening. Jessica shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught between her loyalty to Ayla and her awareness of my connection to her brother Nathan Blake. Do I know you? I asked coldly, looking directly at Ayla. Ayla's lips curled into a sneer. What tone do you want? Someone whose Luna doesn't love her and whose brother doesn't want her. Even if you are a Winterpack daughter, you still lost to Grace. I felt Cora growl beneath my skin, my wolf responding to the insult before I could control myself. Hazel jumped to her feet, her eyes flashing with anger. Lost to Grace? That's rich. The Winterpack is bankrupt now, or haven't you heard? Your precious Grace brought them nothing but bad luck. She stepped closer to Ayla, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Tell me, how many times have you visited your silver-poisoned friend lately? Or are you just here seeking attention by attacking others? Ayla's face contorted with rage. At least I'm not an Omega fed on scraps by the Reynolds pack. Hazel froze, the color draining from her face. I knew those words had cut deep. They were the exact same cruel evaluation that Luna Reynolds had spread about her for years. You little, Hazel started, but her voice caught. Sensing Hazel's distress, Ayla pressed her advantage. What a pair you two make. An Omega fed on scraps and a lone wolf who can't go home to her pack. Pathetic. Something snapped inside me. Before I could think, I stepped forward and slapped Ayla hard across the face. The sound echoed through the restaurant, drawing gasps from nearby patrons. Ayla staggered back, her hand flying to her reddened cheek, her eyes wide with shock. How dare you? She shrieked, lunging at me. I could smell the anger rolling off her in waves. I knew she had harbored resentment toward me ever since I'd ruined her chances with Aiden Walsh months ago. You're just a foster daughter of the Thorn Pack, she spat, clawing at me. What makes you different from Grace? You're just a Thorn Pack dog, not really a princess. At the mention of the Thorn Pack, my true family, the people who had loved me when my biological family had rejected me, something fierce and protective rose within me. I slapped her again, harder this time. Don't you dare speak about my pack, I snarled, Cora's anger fueling my own. Ayla screamed in rage and threw herself at me, her nails aiming for my face. Hazel tried to pull her back, while Jessica frantically attempted to intervene. Stop it, both of you, Jessica pleaded, trying to step between us. We're in a public place. But Ayla was beyond reason, her hatred for me consuming all rational thought. I'll destroy you, she shrieked, struggling against Hazel's grip. The situation was spiraling completely out of control, with other diners now standing and staring at the chaotic scene unfolding before them. Chapter 228, The Consequences of a Reckless Confrontation. I'll destroy you. Ayla Quinn screamed, her face contorted with rage as she lunged at me. Her wolf was rising beneath her skin, her eyes flashing with a dangerous amber glow. The intensity of her hatred caught me off guard. What had started as verbal insults had quickly escalated into something much more volatile. Ayla, stop it! Jessica Miller grabbed her friend's arm, but Ayla shook her off violently. You don't understand, Ayla snarled, her voice nearly unrecognizable with fury. She's ruined everything. My standing in the Northern Territories, my chances with Aiden, everything. Her claws emerged as her partial shift took hold, and she slashed wildly at my face. I ducked instinctively, Cora's reflexes guiding my movements. This isn't going to end well for you, I warned, feeling my own wolf stir beneath my skin. The restaurant guests around us had fallen silent, some filming the confrontation on their phones while others quietly slipped away from the scene. Hazel stood frozen beside me, her eyes wide with shock at the sudden violence. Jessica moved with surprising quickness, wrapping her arms tightly around Ayla from behind, effectively pinning the she-wolf's arms to her sides. "Let go of me!" Ayla thrashed against Jessica's hold, her eyes wild with fury. "What are you doing?" Jessica's grip remained firm. "I'm stopping you from making a terrible mistake." With Ayla effectively restrained by Jessica's bear hug, I found myself presented with an unexpected advantage. The rational part of me knew I should walk away, but Cora was tired of being insulted, tired of being treated as less than what we were. "You called me a thorn-packed dog," I said coldly, stepping forward. My hand lashed out with precision, my nails leaving 3 perfect lines across Ayla's cheek. She screamed in pain and outrage, struggling harder against Jessica's restraint. "Jessica, let me go," Ayla begged frantically. "She's attacking me." Jessica's response was astonishing. "Let it go. You really shouldn't fight with the Thornpack heir," she said firmly, maintaining her grip even as Ayla continued to struggle. Taking advantage of Ayla's helpless position, I delivered several swift kicks to her shins, making her howl in pain. Cora purred with satisfaction beneath my skin, enjoying the retribution against someone who had aligned herself with grace for years. Hazel finally recovered from her shock, moving quickly to grab Ayla's wrist as she managed to partially free one arm from Jessica's hold. "Ayla, you're the daughter of an allied alpha," Hazel said persuasively, her voice firm but reasonable. "You should maintain your dignity." Between Jessica's bear hug and Hazel's grip on her wrist, Ayla was completely immobilized while I remained free to move. The inequity of the situation wasn't lost on me, but after years of enduring Grace and her cronies' scheming, I found it difficult to feel sympathy. Mall security guards finally pushed through the crowd of onlookers, their human faces showing confusion at the intensity of our confrontation. "Ladies, break it up!" the lead guard shouted, moving to separate us. By the time they managed to create distance between us, Ayla's face was covered in scratches and her designer outfit was disheveled and torn in places. I, meanwhile, stood completely pristine, not a hair out of place. Cora had remained safely contained beneath my skin the entire time, unlike Ayla's partially emerged wolf. "She attacked me," Ayla screamed, pointing accusingly at me once the guards had released her. "She's vicious, just like her brother." Jessica quickly moved to intercept Ayla's accusing finger, pushing her hand down. "Calm down. This isn't helping." Something in Jessica's intervention finally pushed Ayla over the edge. She whirled on her supposed friend, her face twisted with betrayal. "Whose side are you on?" she demanded furiously. "Or is this about Daniel Winter? Are you still pining after that useless wolf who chose a human over you?" The words hit Jessica like a physical blow. Her expression immediately hardened, all traces of sympathy vanishing from her features. Without a word, she reached into her purse, pulled out a tissue, and threw it directly at Ayla's face. "Clean yourself up," Jessica said coldly before turning on her heel and walking away. "Jessica, wait!" Ayla called desperately after her. "Don't leave me here." Jessica didn't even pause, disappearing among the curious onlookers without looking back. I could see Ayla's wolf whimpering beneath her skin as her only ally abandoned her. Left alone to face Hazel and me, Ayla's fury redoubled. "Get this straight, I'm the one who got beaten up. What are you pretending for?" she shouted, gesturing wildly at her scratched face and disheveled appearance. To her visible horror, both Hazel and I simultaneously pulled out our phones. I speed-dialed Roman, forcing tears into my voice as he answered. "Roman," I sobbed theatrically into the phone. "Someone said I'm just a dog raised by the Thornpack." Beside me, Hazel was calling Connor with similar dramatic flair. "Connor, you need to come to the mall right away. Some alpha's daughter just attacked me and Scarlett." Ayla's face paled as she realized the powerful wolves we were summoning. Whatever temporary satisfaction she'd gained from confronting me was rapidly evaporating. "You're both crazy," she whispered, backing away slowly. "This isn't over." I smiled coldly, covering the phone briefly. "Oh, but it is. It was over the moment you opened your mouth." The tension in the car was suffocating as we raced toward the mall. Roman's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his ice-blue eyes flashing with his wolf's power. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees around him, making me break into a cold sweat despite the car's heater running at full blast. "Slow down, will you?" I muttered, clutching the door handle as Roman took a corner at alarming speed. "We won't be any help to Scarlett if we crash." Roman's glare silenced me instantly. "Do you really think a helpless she-wolf could possibly overpower Scarlett?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Puff, I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. "Well, no, but she was crying through our mate bond." Roman cut me off, his tone leaving no room for argument. Hunter Stone, seated behind us, leaned forward. His usual stoic expression was replaced by one of barely contained fury. "If someone has hurt the Alpha's mate, there will be consequences." "Look," I tried again, raising my hands placatingly. "The situation seems suspicious to me. Scarlett is more than capable of defending herself, and this Ayla person, she's just a beta from a minor pack." "Ayla Quinn," Roman's voice was like ice. "The she-wolf who's been pursuing you for treatments." I felt a chill run down my spine at his tone. "She's just a patient seeking silver poisoning treatment, not my responsibility," I protested quickly. "Whatever happened between her and Scarlett has nothing to do with me." Roman's silence was more terrifying than any response could have been. We pulled into the mall parking lot with a screech of tires, and before I could say another word, Roman was out of the car, his powerful frame radiating menace. Hunter paused beside me as I scrambled to follow. "Pray nothing serious has happened to Scarlett," he advised quietly, his dark eyes glinting with warning. "Whatever happened can't be my responsibility," I insisted desperately, feeling my wolf cowering beneath my skin as Roman's fury permeated the air around us. We strode through the mall entrance, security guards instinctively stepping aside as Roman's alpha presence cleared a path. The scene ahead at the restaurant entrance was chaotic, onlookers with phones, security personnel, and in the center Scarlett, standing tall and unharmed, while a disheveled she-wolf I recognized as Ayla Quinn was gesturing wildly. "This is ridiculous," I muttered under my breath. "Scarlett doesn't have a scratch on her." Hunter gave me a sideways glance. "Did you expect anything less from our Alpha's mate?" As we approached, I noticed something odd about the situation. Despite Ayla's clear distress and accusatory gestures, it was Scarlett who had tears in her eyes, with Hazel Walsh protectively at her side. The contradiction between Scarlett's pristine appearance and her apparent emotional distress struck me as theatrical at best. But looking at Roman's face as he caught sight of Scarlett's tears, I knew that distinctions like who started it or who actually got hurt were completely irrelevant now. The alpha of the Thorn Pack had arrived to defend his mate, and logic had no place in what would happen next. Chapter 229, Shadow King's Revenge. The chaos I'd expected at the mall never materialized. By the time we arrived, the battlefield had already been abandoned by most of its combatants. The security guards looked relieved to see Roman, probably thinking he'd restore order, rather than potentially escalate the situation. I scanned the area, noticing the conspicuous absence of the other parties involved. Hazel Walsh had apparently been whisked away by Connor Reynolds, his possessiveness finally kicking in when it mattered. Jessica Miller had vanished earlier, according to bystanders, and surprisingly, even Ayla Quinn was nowhere to be seen. "She got a phone call and left in a hurry," a human security guard explained nervously to Roman, his eyes widening at the Alpha's imposing presence. Only Scarlett remained, perched elegantly on a plush chair in the corridor. She was sipping on an oversized berry smoothie, her eyes slightly reddened, the only indication of her supposed distress. The contrast between her pristine appearance and tearful eyes struck me as oddly theatrical. I started to approach her, eager to get to the bottom of whatever had actually happened, when Hunter's firm hand gripped my shoulder. "Let the Alpha handle this," he warned quietly, his eyes never leaving Roman's back. We hung back, observing from a distance as Roman approached his mate. Scarlett looked up at him with those emerald eyes, somehow managing to appear both vulnerable and completely unaffected by the earlier confrontation. My wolf's senses tingled with suspicion. "I don't understand what happened," I muttered to Hunter. "I barely even remember Ayla's pack contact information. I only treated her for minor silver exposure once, months ago." Hunter gave me a withering look. "This has nothing to do with you. It's about someone daring to insult the Alpha's mate." Roman sat beside Scarlett, his movements fluid and controlled despite the anger I knew was simmering beneath his composed exterior. He reached out, gently stroking her auburn hair. "Did you get into a fight?" His voice was surprisingly tender, a stark contrast to the icy fury he'd displayed in the car. When Scarlett didn't immediately respond, Roman simply pulled her onto his lap in one smooth motion. I saw her eyes widen in shock at such a public display of affection. Even from our distance, I could practically feel the contentment radiating from Roman's wolf Logan beneath his skin. "Roman," Scarlett protested weakly, "we're in a public mall." A small smile played at the corner of Roman's mouth. "It's your mall, Coyote." The statement hung in the air as Scarlett froze, clearly processing his words. I strained to hear better, inching closer despite Hunter's warning glance. "My what?" Scarlett asked, nearly dropping her smoothie. "This mall," Roman explained calmly as though discussing the weather, "was purchased and put in your name a year ago, just like the seaside villa." The shock on Scarlett's face was genuine. I'd stake my reputation on it. She genuinely had no idea she owned not just a luxury seaside property, but also the largest high-end shopping mall in the Northern Territories. "This kind of extravagant courtship," I whispered to Hunter. "Who could resist it? A mall. A whole damn mall." Hunter nodded knowingly, and that's not even half of what he's given her over the years. No wonder she never developed feelings for Alexander, despite his status as one of the territory's top young alphas, I mused, watching the couple. Roman has lavished her with so much that no other wolf could possibly impress her. Hunter remained vigilant, his wolf senses clearly on high alert as he watched the interaction. The alpha has been preparing for her since they were young. Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a well-dressed beta wolf. I recognized him immediately, Maxwell Bennett, the mall's CEO, known for his business acumen and careful navigation of pack politics. He approached Roman and Scarlett with controlled deference, his beta energy carefully subdued in the presence of such a powerful alpha. "Alpha Thorn," Bennett bowed slightly. "A pleasure to have you visit." Scarlett's shock doubled as she recognized him. "Mr. Bennett, you work for me?" Bennett smiled politely. "I oversee the mall's operations back Miss Winters. It's an honor to serve." I could see the wheels turning in Scarlett's head as she processed this new reality. She'd previously considered Bennett a great benefactor during her healing center's collaboration with the mall for fundraising events. Roman's voice cut through the moment, cold and precise. "Bennett, I want the Quinn family blacklisted from this mall, effective immediately." Bennett nodded without hesitation. "Of course, Alpha." "Wait," Scarlett interrupted, surprising all of us. Her voice had lost its emotional edge, replaced by something more calculated. "Not like that." Roman's ice-blue eyes darkened dangerously. "Scarlett, she insulted you." "I know," Scarlett continued, her posture straightening. "But rather than banning her, I think we should take a different approach. Not only should we let her in, but assign our best sales staff to serve her." Roman began to object, but Scarlett cut him off with unexpected firmness. "We need to have a broader perspective." I watched in fascination as her wolf Cora stirred beneath her skin, clearly satisfied with whatever scheme was forming in her mind. The dynamic between them had shifted subtly. No longer was this about Roman protecting his distressed mate. Something more strategic was at play. Scarlett turned to Bennett, explaining her plan with startling precision. Every store should call her weekly about new arrivals, exclusive previews, and limited editions. Use aggressive sales tactics to encourage her spending. Bennett looked caught between confusion and admiration. "May I ask why, Miss Winters?" "Ayla loves to show off," Scarlett explained with a small smile. "She competes with Grace Winter in displays of wealth. Instead of banning her, we'll bleed her dry through her own vanity." I couldn't contain my skepticism. After today's incident, will she even have money to spend? Won't her father cut her off? Scarlett looked up at Roman, who embraced her closer. "Whatever you say, little wolf, you have perspective." The way his wolf Logan rumbled with approval at his mate's cunning scheme was almost palpable. I observed their exchange with growing suspicion, increasingly certain that their idea of perspective was simply a more sophisticated form of revenge, death by 1,000 cuts rather than a single blow. Later at Roman's seaside villa, Roman and Bennett disappeared into the study with Hunter following closely behind. I remained in the living room with Scarlett, who was still clutching her oversized berry smoothie. My wolf's senses picked up something unusual, a subtle change in her scent that I couldn't quite place. Something familiar yet unexpected tickled at my healer's instincts. "You should drink less of that now," I said instinctively, gesturing to the sweet beverage. Scarlett looked puzzled. "What? Why?" Unsure how to explain what my wolf was sensing without being certain, I quickly changed the subject. Who actually hit whom in that confrontation with Ayla? Her emerald eyes gleamed with mischief. "Are you taking sides, Aiden?" "No," I protested immediately, my wolf bristling beneath my skin at the accusation. "I'm just trying to understand what actually happened. Every time you're involved in some confrontation, the other party ends up looking like they went through a meat grinder while you don't have a scratch." "And?" Scarlett raised an eyebrow. "And I find it hard to believe you were the victim here," I stated bluntly. "You hit her, didn't you?" Scarlett took another sip of her smoothie, a knowing smile playing on her lips. The expression confirmed my suspicion, without her needing to say a word. In that moment, I understood why Roman called her Little Wolf. Beneath that beautiful exterior lay the heart of a predator who knew exactly how to get what she wanted. Her smile was answer enough. Chapter 230, Confrontation and Revelations. I closed the heavy mahogany door of my study and gestured for Maxwell Bennett to take a seat. The beta sat promptly, his posture perfectly straight as he watched me reach for my cigarette case. The silver case gleamed in the dim light as I flipped it open. I lit a cigarette, taking a long drag before tossing the pack to Bennett. His hand caught it midair with practiced ease. "That Quinn family doesn't need to exist anymore," I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. The smoke curled upward as I observed Bennett's reaction. He was in the middle of lighting his own cigarette when he paused, the flame dancing inches from the tip. Understanding dawned in his eyes as he processed my words. Bennett knew me well enough to recognize the difference between Scarlett's plan at the mall and my actual intentions. I had restrained myself only to appease my mate in public. "I understand, Alpha," Bennett replied carefully, finally lighting his cigarette. "Miss Winter's plan regarding the sales tactics will proceed as she wishes," I finished for him. "But I have additional requirements." Bennett nodded, his beta wolf energy carefully controlled in my presence. He had managed Scarlett's assets in the Northern Territories with competence for the past 2 years. "You oversee Northern Medical Supplies, the luxury mall, and Scarlett's healing studio," I reminded him, unnecessary as it was. The one she initially planned for Emma Chase before Emma departed for the European territories. "Yes, Alpha. Miss Winters hasn't suffered much in the Northern Territories during these past 2 years. Her investments have thrived under our management." I flicked the ash from my cigarette, my gaze hardening. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as my wolf Logan stirred beneath my skin. "Their very existence is her suffering," I said, my ice-blue eyes flashing dangerously. Bennett wisely remained silent, but I could smell the fear radiating from him. He understood perfectly what I was asking without me having to spell it out. The Quinn family would soon cease to be a concern for anyone, especially my mate. "How quickly can it be done?" I asked, taking another drag of my cigarette. Bennett considered for only a moment. 2 weeks at most, Alpha. Their pack has several vulnerable business connections that can be leveraged." "You have 1 week." Bennett swallowed hard but nodded. 1 week it is, Alpha." The interior of Connor's luxury car felt suffocating despite its spaciousness. I pressed myself against the door, putting as much distance between us as the confined space would allow. Connor ended his phone call with a command that sent chills down my spine. "Within 1 week, I want to hear news of the Quinn family's bankruptcy." After hanging up, he tossed his phone onto the dashboard. Before I could react, his strong hands grabbed my waist and pulled me firmly across the seat into his arms. "Connor, what are you doing?" I complained, pushing against his chest. He didn't answer with words. Instead, his mouth claimed mine in a forceful kiss, his wolf rising beneath his skin. I could feel the possessiveness in his touch, the barely controlled anger simmering just underneath. When he finally released me, I gasped for air, my lips tender from the pressure. Hazel, I just received news that you met Scarlett Winters, he said, his voice deceptively calm. I froze at his words, my heart rate accelerating. How did he know? I had been careful not to mention it to anyone. What did she tell you? Connor demanded, his fingers tightening on my waist. The intensity of his reaction confused me. This wasn't just about my friendship with Scarlett. There was something deeper, something he wasn't telling me. The tears welled in my eyes as years of accumulated hurt and questions suddenly bubbled to the surface. Why is your mother so hostile toward me? I asked, my voice trembling. My father died saving yours, yet your mother seems to want me dead. Why? I pulled away from his grasp, shifting closer to the window. My wolf whimpered beneath my skin, confused by the conflicting emotions. Did Scarlett give you answers? Connor asked sharply, ignoring my questions entirely. I remained silent, staring out at the passing landscape. The truth was that Scarlett hadn't provided concrete answers, but she had planted doubts, stirring waves in my mind that couldn't be calmed. Connor's hand reached out, turning my face toward him. He pressed his forehead against mine, his breath warm against my skin. Scarlett is not a good person, he warned, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Whatever she told you, forget it, okay? The command in his tone was unmistakable, almost threatening. For the first time, I glimpsed the true extent of his hatred toward Scarlett, his wolf's energy crackling between us like electricity. Why do you hate her so much? I whispered. Connor pulled back slightly, his eyes cold and distant. That's not something you need to concern yourself with. But Enough, Hazel, he cut me off. It's been a long day. Let's go home. Home. The word should have brought comfort. But instead, it left me feeling hollow. Was it truly my home if I wasn't welcome there? If Connor's family viewed me with such disdain? As the car accelerated toward the Reynolds-packed territory, I couldn't help but wonder what secrets connected Connor's family to Scarlett Winters, and whether those secrets would ultimately tear us apart. I stared at the ceiling of Erik's grand villa, trying unsuccessfully to distract myself with pack gossip I'd learned from my phone calls with Scarlett and Hazel, but my mind kept returning to the shocking moment when I'd awakened naked that morning, with no memory of how I'd gotten that way. Earlier in the day, I'd tried to leave the villa, only to discover that the property was heavily guarded. Pack enforcers positioned at every exit had politely but firmly guided me back inside when I'd attempted to step out. Alpha's orders, Miss Chase, explained one particularly muscular beta. For your safety. Safety or imprisonment? The line seemed increasingly blurred. By evening, Erik finally returned. He didn't acknowledge my attempts to question him about my confinement, simply instructing his staff to prepare dinner. To my surprise, they served traditional Northern Territory cuisine: venison stew, fermented berry bread, and roasted root vegetables. As we sat across from each other at the massive dining table, I moved the food around my plate without taking more than a few bites. My stomach was too knotted with anxiety to enjoy even my favorite dishes. Erik took a sip of his wine, his amber eyes studying me over the rim of his glass. Aren't you supposed to be a big eater? Why is your appetite like a mouse's now? I bristled at the big eater comment. Was that how people described me? The thought was mortifying, but I had more important concerns right now. I'm not hungry, I mumbled, poking at a chunk of venison with my fork. What I couldn't stop thinking about was the blood I'd noticed on the sheets that morning. Not much, just a few small spots, but enough to worry me. Combined with my missing clothes and the gaps in my memory, it painted a disturbing picture. I glanced up at Erik, trying to read his expression. His face remained impassive as he continued eating, seemingly unconcerned by my discomfort. The powerful alpha aura he emanated made my wolf cower beneath my skin. The questions burned in my throat, demanding to be asked. What happened last night? Why can't I remember? Why was I naked? Why was there blood? But I couldn't bring myself to voice them all. The potential answers terrified me. Finally, gathering my courage, I lowered my head and asked softly, "Did you take off my clothes last night?" My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it across the table. I held my breath, waiting for his response, trying to ignore the dangerous alpha aura he emanated with every breath. Chapter 231, Emma's Embarrassment and Darian's Plot. The venison on my plate had grown cold, but I barely noticed. My heart pounded against my rib cage as I forced myself to ask the question that had been tormenting me all day. Were my clothes taken off by you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't bring myself to meet Erik Blackwood's intense gaze. His alpha aura pressed down on me like a physical weight, making it difficult to breathe. The dining room fell eerily silent, save for the soft clink of his silverware against fine china. This wasn't just about modesty. The blood spots on the sheets, my missing clothes, the gaps in my memory, all of it pointed to something that made my stomach twist with dread. What exactly had happened while I was unconscious with fever? When Erik didn't immediately answer, I cautiously lifted my gaze. Bad idea. His expression was so frightening that I quickly lowered my eyes again, focusing on the intricate pattern of the tablecloth. His wolf was simmering just beneath the surface. I could feel it, dangerous and unpredictable. Does it matter? He finally asked, his voice as cold as winter in the European territories. I felt tears welling up at his callous response. The Northern Territories had its share of intimidating alphas, but none possessed Erik's particular brand of casual cruelty. A lump formed in my throat as the full weight of my vulnerability crashed down on me. Yes, it matters to me, I managed to say, though my voice trembled embarrassingly. I'd never felt so utterly exposed and helpless. Back home, as the daughter of a respected healer, I'd been relatively sheltered. The dangers I'd faced recently had always seemed like something happening to others, something I observed rather than experienced. I took them off, Erik admitted bluntly. So what? The tension intensified, his alpha power crackling in the air between us. My wolf cowered deeper beneath my skin, instinctively submitting to his dominance. What do you intend to do about it? He continued, a dangerous edge to his voice. His amber eyes pinned me in place, reminding me of the violence I'd witnessed, the silver bullets, the blood, the casual way he'd eliminated threats. What could I possibly do against someone like him? Nothing, I responded meekly, restlessly poking at the venison medallions in my bowl. Erik let out a short, cold laugh that sent shivers down my spine. With your build, even if you offered yourself, I wouldn't be interested. My head snapped up in shock, my cheeks burning with humiliation. Then, like a flash of lightning, Scarlett's words came back to me. Her gossip about Erik's inability to perform. Was that what he meant? His eyes narrowed dangerously when he noticed my expression. What kind of look is that? He demanded. And nothing, I stammered, quickly schooling my features. I wasn't thinking anything. Despite my embarrassment, I felt an unexpected wave of relief wash over me. Perhaps Scarlett's rumor was true. If Erik truly couldn't perform, then nothing intimate could have happened while I was unconscious. I straightened slightly in my chair, reclaiming a small sliver of dignity. Anyway, you're not allowed to take off my clothes again. Erik raised one eyebrow, his gaze sharpening at my use of the word again. The tiny spark of confidence I'd managed to ignite immediately flickered out. That is... I fumbled, my words tangling as his intense gaze bore into me. My wolf whimpered beneath my skin, urging me to submit, to apologize, to do anything that might diffuse the tension crackling between us. The makeshift bed beneath me did little to ease the throbbing pain in my silver-damaged leg. Through the small window of Darian's private jet, I could see the ground crew preparing for takeoff, eager to leave this secure rogue hideout behind. My stomach twisted as I recalled what I'd witnessed hours earlier. Darian Morrison's brutality toward Victor Blackwell had shocked even me, and I'd thought I'd seen the full extent of Darian's ruthlessness during our recent conflicts. The savage kicks, the methodical way he'd broken the man's ribs one by one, the cold fury in his eyes when Victor had dared to express interest in Scarlett Winters. It was a display of unrestrained cruelty that had me questioning, not for the first time, if I'd aligned myself with the wrong wolf. Darian paced near the front of the cabin, his satellite phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, calculated, sending a chill down my spine despite the cabin's warmth. Yes, proceed according to the plan, he instructed whoever was on the other end. When he ended the call, I couldn't remain silent any longer. What are you planning now? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Something involving Scarlett again? Darian's amber eyes flickered toward me, his expression unreadable. Always so concerned, Ryan. It's almost as if you care for the little wolf yourself. I'm concerned about your obsession, I countered carefully. She and Roman Thorne are already recognized mates. You need to accept that. A dangerous smile played at the corners of Darian's mouth. Do you remember why she supposedly developed feelings for Roman in the first place? My heart tightened with unease. There was something buried there, pack history and personal vendettas that predated my time with Darian. Whatever happened in the past should stay there, I suggested, shifting to ease the pressure on my injured leg. This feud between you and Roman? It's destructive. And Scarlett's caught in the middle. I hesitated before continuing, aware I was treading on dangerous ground. Maybe you should resolve your misunderstandings rather than continuing this path. Darian's smile didn't reach his eyes as he settled into the seat across from me. You're right, Ryan. The misunderstandings should be cleared. Something in his tone made my wolf's hackles rise. The European territories. I should go back, he continued softly. I fought to keep my expression neutral, but a sense of foreboding washed over me. Darian's connection to the European territories, where Scarlett had spent part of her youth and where Erik Blackwood now held Emma Chase, seemed suddenly significant in ways I couldn't fully grasp. What's in Europe? I asked cautiously. The beginning, Darian replied cryptically, and perhaps the end. The jet engines roared to life, drowning out any further conversation, but the dangerous gleam in Darian's amber eyes spoke volumes. Whatever he was planning, it went far beyond settling old scores or addressing pack politics. Scarlett's povey. I was curled up on the sofa with a warm blanket when my phone rang. Roman had just stepped into the shower, so I answered quickly, recognizing Emma's number. Emma, what's wrong? I asked, immediately concerned by the sound of her broken breathing. The response was a flood of tears and incoherent sobbing. My protective instincts surged instantly. Tell me who bullied you, Emma. I demanded fiercely, sitting up straight, and I'll have Roman deal with them. I mentally catalogued the considerable resources Roman had, unbeknownst to me until recently, placed under my name in the European territories. If necessary, I could mobilize them to help Emma. It's Erik, Emma finally managed between hiccuping sobs. Erik, what did he do? I asked, my voice hardening. When she finally explained, I was utterly shocked. He took off your clothes while you were unconscious with fever? Yes, Emma wailed. I woke up completely naked, and there was blood on the sheets. I froze. Blood? That detail was new and alarming. I initially thought it must have been a female pack servant or healer, I said, trying to make sense of it. Then I remembered Erik's preference for solitude in his private residence. Unlike other packs, Erik's inner circle consisted almost exclusively of male betas and enforcers. The European alpha was known for keeping very few female wolves in his immediate household staff. There weren't any female servants, Emma confirmed between sobs. Just him, and I was unconscious with fever, and now he's being so cold about it. My mind raced, trying to reconcile this behavior with the Erik I knew through Roman. Cold, dangerous, calculating. Yes, but taking advantage of an unconscious she-wolf? That didn't align with the man Roman considered an ally. Unless... Emma, did he say anything about why he did it? About your fever? No, nothing. Emma's voice rose in distress. He just admitted he did it like it was nothing important. And then he had the nerve to say even if I offered myself, he wouldn't be interested. That sounded more like the Erik I knew, brutally honest to the point of cruelty. Scarlett, Emma pleaded through her tears, will you help me deal with him? You have to tell him off. Her voice broke on the last word, her desperation clear even through the phone. I'd never heard my confident, bubbly friend sound so utterly defeated. Emma, I began carefully, I'll help you, I promise, but first I need to understand exactly what happened. Did he do anything else besides removing your clothes? Emma fell silent for a moment, her breathing uneven. I don't know, she admitted finally. I can't remember anything clearly, just waking up naked with those blood spots nearby. My protective instincts flared again. If Erik had taken advantage of Emma in any way, not even his status as European alpha would protect him from Roman's wrath or mine. Scarlett, will you help me deal with him? You have to tell him off. Chapter 232, torn between two discomforts. When Emma's trembling voice came through the phone, my heart sank. He saw me naked. Her sobs grew louder, filling the silence around me. I froze, the unexpected words piercing through me. "Wait, Emma, what are you talking about?" My voice came out sharper than intended, laced with confusion and concern. "Who saw you naked, Erik?" The tightness in my chest grew as I said his name out loud. Her reply was almost incoherent between sobs. While I was feverish, he undressed me. I sucked in a sharp breath. Erik, that terrifying, unpredictable alpha? The one even the bravest wolves feared to provoke? My hands tightened around my phone as I tried to suppress my growing dread. "Emma, slow down," I urged, softening tone my voice. It was him. Maybe it was a healer or one of his staff. I knew Erik's reputation, ruthless, cold, and a lone wolf in every sense. But even for him, this was hard to believe. "No," Emma whimpered. "It was him. No other female staff are here. He admitted it. He said he took my clothes off, Scarlett." I closed my eyes, my mind spinning. Then a memory surfaced. Natalie once mentioned something, rumors about Erik. Quiet whispers that followed him everywhere. They said he wasn't interested in mating, that he had issues in that department. "Emma, calm down," I said gently, though a tremor of unease ran through me. I think there might be a misunderstanding, but even as I spoke the words, I didn't fully believe them. Emma sniffled. "What misunderstanding? He doesn't care. He doesn't even think it's a big deal. Scarlett, how can an alpha behave like this?" My grip on the phone tightened. "Emma, listen to me. Did he do anything else? Anything that crossed the line?" I hated to ask, but I needed to know. "No, he didn't," she said quickly, her voice rising in desperation. "But Scarlett, he saw me. I'm still an unmated she-wolf. He's this powerful, untouchable alpha, and I'm—" Her words trailed off into another tearful sob. I rubbed my temples, trying to think clearly. "All right, Emma," I began slowly. "I'll figure something out." "Figure something out? Scarlett, I need help now." Her panic was palpable. I hesitated before offering. "I can send our Thornpack enforcers to bring you here, to our eastern territories. You'll be safe at the compound with us." Her cries faded into silence. For a moment I thought the line went dead, but when she spoke again her voice trembled. "No, I can't," Emma said, almost in a whisper. "Why not?" I pressed. "Your mother, Luna Catherine? Scarlett, I can't." The mention of Luna Catherine made my heart churn. "Emma, you don't have to be nervous around her. She's kind. You'll be safe under her care." Emma let out a bitter laugh, surprising me. "Kind? Scarlett, I've heard the stories. A Luna that even hardened Alpha's respect out of fear? With her powers and foresight? I don't belong in something like that. She's too powerful." "Emma," I argued, "she's not how you think. She's nothing like what the gossip says. She means no harm." "I'm just a healer's daughter, Scarlett," Emma cut me off. "I was raised far away from complex packs and their high-ranked wolves. I wouldn't even know how to speak to someone like Luna Catherine." Her emotions were raw, her words frantic. She truly felt trapped between two impossible choices, Erik's dominance or the grandeur of the Thornpack's compound. I softened my voice. "Emma, I understand, but what's your plan? Stay with Erik?" Her voice broke again as she admitted, "I don't know. He promised to investigate my mother and Jason's whereabouts. But I can't even look him in the eye now. Not after what happened this morning." I exhaled heavily. The situation was worse than I'd thought. "Emma," I began, carefully choosing my words. "I know Erik can be intense, but he's not the kind to hurt someone unless necessary." She snorted bitterly. "Scarlett, you always try to see the good in people. That's easy for you. Roman worships the ground you walk on, and his pack protects you, but not everyone lives in a fairy tale." Her words stung, but I swallowed my pride. "Emma, I just want to help you. I want you to be safe." "Then find my mother." "Or Jason," Emma pleaded. "That's the only thing that will make me feel safe." Her trust in her mother was unshakable. As much as I admired her loyalty, I couldn't help but feel frustrated. "Erik is looking into it, Emma," I reminded her. "He's your best chance at answers right now." She whispered, almost trembling. "But do I have to be near him for that? Scarlett, he just—" Her voice broke before she finished. Her pain was like a weight pressing on my chest, and I sighed deeply. "I'll do what I can. Just try to hold on for now." Emma's silence on the other end made my heart ache. "Thank you," she finally whispered. As the call ended, I leaned back against the headboard, feeling both exhausted and helpless. Erik Blackwood was unpredictable. Emma was terrified, and I didn't know how to untangle this mess. Just as I let out a weary exhale, the door creaked open. Roman entered, his powerful presence filling the room instantly. He carried the faint scent of the outdoors, crisp and unmistakably him. He crossed the room in a few quick strides, sitting beside me on the bed and ruffling my hair fondly. "Who were you talking to?" he asked, his ice blue eyes warm with curiosity. For a moment I debated whether to tell him everything, but Roman was my mate, my protector. If anyone could handle Erik, it was him. "It was Emma," I admitted. Sitting up straighter, Roman tilted his head, waiting for me to continue. "She's really upset," I said, agitation bubbling up again. Apparently, Erik undressed her while she was feverish. As I spoke the words, I cringed internally, anticipating Roman's reaction. His brow furrowed slightly, but he didn't interrupt. "She's terrified, Roman," I continued, my words spilling out faster now. "She thinks he was inappropriate, but with Erik, I don't know what to believe." Roman's jaw tightened imperceptibly, his protectiveness surfacing. "She's overwhelmed," I added, my hands fidgeting, "and his behavior isn't helping. If he's investigating her mother's disappearance, he needs to focus on that. He can't treat her like this." Roman nodded slowly. "I'll speak to him," he promised, his voice steady. I bit my lip before blurting out, "You should also tell him to stop acting so cold, especially with those rumors about him." Roman arched a curious brow. "Rumors?" I hesitated. "Well, you know, about his issues." Roman leaned back slightly, crossing his arms. "Issues?" he repeated, clearly intrigued. "You know," I said, floundering. "The rumors that he's all alpha power, but not interested in claiming a mate." Roman's expression remained unreadable, but I could see the faintest glimmer of amusement in his eyes. "I mean, it's not just me," I pressed defensively. "Others have said it too. Maybe it's why he acts so indifferent." "Issues?" Roman's eyebrow arched higher, his ice blue eyes gleaming with amusement. "What kind of issues are you suggesting Erik has, little wolf?" I felt heat rush to my cheeks as I realized what I'd inadvertently implied about the European alpha. Roman's lips curved into a knowing smirk, making me squirm under his gaze. "I just meant, you know," I stammered, suddenly feeling like I'd stepped into dangerous territory. "The rumors that Natalie mentioned once." Roman's fingertips traced my jawline teasingly. "Are you gossiping about other alphas now? I think you've been spending too much time with Aiden Walsh." Chapter 233, Jealousy and Revelations. Roman's fingertips traced my jawline teasingly. "Are you gossiping about other alphas now? I think you've been spending too much time with Aiden Walsh." "I'm not gossiping," I protested, feeling my blush deepen. "I'm genuinely concerned about Emma." He pressed his palm against my forehead in an exaggerated gesture. "No fever. Are you delirious for some other reason?" "Roman?" I swatted his hand away, mortified by what I'd accidentally suggested about Erik. "You're impossible." His chuckle was low and warm. "And you're adorable when you're flustered." I quickly changed the subject, desperate to escape my embarrassment. "What about Emma? She's really scared, Roman. I've never heard her like this before." Roman's expression softened slightly. "I told you before Erik won't eat her." "But she sounded so frightened on the phone," I insisted, remembering the tremor in Emma's voice. "You know how Erik is, cold and intimidating even when he's not trying to be." "Emma Chase has never been a timid wolf," Roman observed, leaning back against the headboard, "though I suppose recent events would shake anyone's courage." I nodded eagerly. "Exactly. She was chased at the airport, then witnessed a silver bullet confrontation. She's completely out of her element." "And now she's alone with Erik," Roman finished, his voice thoughtful. "Why is Erik even helping her?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. He's never shown interest in Northern Territory wolves before, especially not healers like Emma. Roman's eyes met mine with unexpected intensity. "Erik is involving himself unusually deeply in someone else's affairs. I believe this has become a private matter between them now." I opened my mouth to ask what he meant, but Roman shifted the subject with practiced ease. "We'll return to the main Thornpack house the day after tomorrow," he announced, stroking my hair. The news instantly brightened my mood. "Really? We're leaving Shadow Valley?" I couldn't hide my excitement at the prospect of escaping this secluded place with its heavy atmosphere. The desperation of the winter pack had been suffocating, especially Sarah Winter's persistent attempts to contact me about Grace's treatment. You seem pleased by the news, Roman observed, a small smile playing on his lips. Of course I am, I admitted. I'm tired of Sarah Winter hovering at our gates, pretending we share some bond now that she knows who I am. It was almost laughable how quickly the Winter Pack had changed their tune once they discovered my position within the Thorn Pack. The same people who had scorned and rejected me now scrambled to claim kinship, not out of genuine affection, but because they needed my resources. Impulsively, I reached up and pressed a quick kiss to Roman's cheek, grateful for his protection from those who would use me. His skin was warm against my lips, carrying the clean scent of his shower. When I attempted to snuggle back under the blankets, Roman's hand shot out, catching me firmly by the waist. His grip was gentle but unyielding as he pulled me back toward him. "Sparking my wolf and then trying to flee?" he murmured, his voice dropping to that dangerous octave that always made my heart race. "Not very wise of you, little coyote." "I wasn't trying to provoke you," I protested, pushing against his chest with both hands. "I was just happy about leaving." Roman easily countered my resistance, swiftly pinning me beneath him on the bed. He captured my wrists in one hand, holding them above my head, while his other hand traced the curve of my waist. His alpha power surrounded us like an electric field, making my skin tingle wherever he touched. "Roman," I pleaded, looking up into his intense gaze. I could see the hunger in his ice-blue eyes, feel the barely restrained power of his wolf Logan beneath his skin. His expression softened slightly at my tone. "Be good, little wolf," he murmured tenderly, his voice husky with intent. I shook my head frantically. I'd learned through experience that whenever Roman asked me to be good in that particular tone, he usually had very specific ideas concerning our mate bond, ideas that my still-healing body wasn't ready for. "I won't be too rough," he promised, misreading my hesitation. "I'll be careful of your injuries." "No," I insisted, wiggling beneath him futilely. "I don't want any of it right now." I felt tears of frustration gathering in my eyes. Why couldn't he understand that I needed more time to heal? Looking down at me, Roman's lips curved into a possessive smile. Rather than being deterred by my resistance, he seemed amused by it, his mischievous side emerging as he leaned closer. Third person's POV. The atmosphere in the VIP room of Northern Lights, one of the Northern Territory's most exclusive clubs, was heavy with tension. Alexander Amber sat slouched in a plush leather chair, an empty bottle of moonlight wine dangling from his fingers, while another lay discarded on the table beside him. His normally immaculate appearance had deteriorated, his shirt rumpled, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot from a combination of alcohol and emotion. The premium wine brewed specifically for werewolves during the full moon had a potency that would have incapacitated a lesser wolf hours ago. Ben Carter and Leo Vance, who had just flown in that evening, exchanged concerned glances as Alexander drained his third bottle without uttering a single word. The silence in the room was broken only by the muffled bass from the club beyond their private sanctuary. "Enough," Leo finally declared, reaching forward to take the empty bottle from Alexander's grasp. "What the hell is going on with you?" Alexander's amber eyes flickered up, unfocused, yet somehow still burning with inner turmoil. He reached for another bottle without responding. "Seriously, Alpha." Ben leaned forward, genuine concern etched on his face. "We fly in and find you drinking yourself into oblivion. This isn't like you." Alexander uncorked the fourth bottle with practiced ease, taking a long swallow before responding. His wolf mason stirred restlessly beneath his skin, agitated by both the alcohol and the emotional maelstrom within. "Is it about Scarlett Winters?" Ben ventured cautiously. "We heard rumors she officially mated with Roman Thorn." Alexander's bitter laugh held no humor. "Scarlett," he repeated, the name falling from his lips like a prayer and a curse simultaneously. Leo frowned, puzzled by his alpha's behavior. "I don't understand. Is Grace in the territory? Who's causing you such anguish?" The mention of Grace's name visibly intensified Alexander's turmoil. His knuckles whitened around the neck of the wine bottle, the veins in his forearms standing out as he struggled to maintain control. When Leo attempted to remove the bottle from his grasp, Alexander snatched another from the ice bucket, downing half of it in one long, desperate swallow. "Maybe you actually fell for Scarlett Winters?" Leo speculated aloud, his tone slightly derisive. "That vicious she-wolf." "She is not. Alexander's voice cut through the room like a silver blade, sharp with unexpected intensity. His wolf mason surged beneath his skin, responding to the perceived insult. Both betas froze, startled by the fierce defense from a wolf who had never before spoken in Scarlett's favor. The vicious one was never her, Alexander declared grimly, setting the bottle down with deliberate control that seemed to cost him tremendous effort. Ben and Leo exchanged bewildered glances. For years, the narrative throughout the Northern Territories had positioned Scarlett as the jealous biological daughter who couldn't accept Grace's place in the winter pack. Then who? Ben ventured, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Alexander's eyes closed briefly, pain washing over his features. Grace, he said finally, his voice tight. She almost took Scarlett's life years ago. An unnerving silence filled the room as his friends absorbed the shocking revelation. The rogue wolf attack, Ben said slowly, disbelief coloring his tone. Was that really Grace's doing? Scarlett wasn't just making false accusations? Alexander's laugh was hollow, empty of anything resembling humor. All this time, we called Scarlett unstable, selfish. We dismissed her claims because sweet, perfect Grace couldn't possibly be capable of such a thing. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, memories washing over him like a toxic tide. The winter pack even threatened to disown her if she couldn't accept Grace. How laughable those threats seem now. His voice dropped to a whisper, raw with self-recrimination. Who could tolerate someone who had orchestrated a potentially fatal attack against them? Leo leaned forward, his expression serious. How did you find out? Evidence, Alexander replied simply. Irrefutable evidence that I can't ignore any longer. And now, Leo prompted gently. Alexander's bitter smile didn't reach his eyes as he lifted the bottle once more. What else? Scarlett doesn't want me anymore. Grace is the one who tried to kill her, but she's also dying from silver poisoning. Chapter 234, Revelations and Confrontations. I stared at the screen of my phone, my thumb hovering over Grace Winter's name before deliberately hitting the block contact option. The action felt strangely final, a severing of ties that once seemed unbreakable. Leo watched me with careful eyes as I completed the gesture. So it's done then? It's done, I confirmed, setting my phone down on the table between us. The moonlight wine had left my head pounding, but my thoughts were clearer than they had been in weeks. The evidence against Grace was irrefutable. The woman I'd believed I loved had orchestrated an attack that could have killed Scarlett. The realization still felt like a silver blade twisting in my gut. Are you sure about this? Ben asked quietly, leaning forward in his chair. The Winter Pack Alliance would be built on lies, I cut him off sharply. What kind of alpha would I be if I mated with someone who tried to murder another wolf? The VIP room of Northern Lights fell silent, except for the muted thump of music from the main club. My wolf mason paced restlessly beneath my skin, agitated by both the alcohol and my turbulent emotions. What about Scarlett? Ben ventured cautiously, his eyes studying my face. Do you still have feelings for her? I flinched at the direct question. Did I? The arranged alliance had initially been purely political. Scarlett was beautiful, powerful, well-connected, a perfect Luna candidate on paper. But somewhere along the line, something had shifted. I'd begun to see glimpses of who she truly was beneath her careful exterior. Leo's sharp intake of breath interrupted my thoughts. Alexander, he warned, don't court trouble. Roman Thorn and the Thorn Pack aren't forces to be trifled with. His words struck a nerve. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Do I even have the right to approach her now? The question hung heavy in the air between us. If I hadn't called off our planned mating ceremony, the alliance our packs had arranged, Scarlett would be my marked mate by now. But I'd chosen Grace instead, believed Grace's lies, dismissed Scarlett as unstable and vindictive. No, Leo said bluntly, meeting my gaze without flinching. You don't. Roman Thorn has clearly grown close to his adopted sister, and he definitely harbors deep feelings for her. The confirmation struck me with a physical force, like a blow to the solar plexus. I'd suspected it, of course. The way Roman had always been so protective of Scarlett, the rumors of his obsessive devotion, the ferocity with he'd confronted me when I'd broken off the alliance. But hearing it stated so plainly still hurt in a way I hadn't anticipated. She's his mate now, Leo continued, his tone softening slightly at my expression. That ship has sailed, Alpha. Before I could formulate a response, my phone rang insistently. I glanced down, recognizing the Amber Pack's main line. Alpha Alexander, Miles's voice came through the speaker, tense and formal. You need to return to the estate immediately. I straightened in my chair, instantly alert despite the lingering effects of the wine. What's happened? There's been a situation, Miles replied, his usual composure clearly strained. A family emergency that requires your immediate attention. In the background, I could hear my mother's voice, rising with uncharacteristic hysteria. I want him off our territory now. Do you hear me? Now. A cold dread settled in my stomach. My mother, Luna Victoria Amber, was known throughout the Northern Territories for her poise and control. I had never heard her sound like this, raw, furious, nearly feral with rage. Miles, what's going on? I demanded, already on my feet. Sir, it's difficult to explain over the phone, but it concerns your father. Miles's voice dropped lower. Someone has arrived at the estate claiming to be your half-brother. The words hit me like a physical blow. My father, James Amber, Northern Alpha King, had built his reputation on honor and fidelity. The idea that he might have a secret child was unthinkable. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I growled, signaling to Ben and Leo to follow as I strode toward the door. My wolf mason snarled beneath my skin, sharing my agitation. Whatever was happening at the Amber estate, I had a sinking feeling that our pack would never be the same again. Scarlett's puke. I stretched languidly in the enormous bed, unsurprised to find Roman already gone. The pillow still held the faint scent of his wolf Logan, but the sheets beside me were cool to the touch. He'd likely been dealing with shadow organization matters since before dawn. My phone vibrated on the nightstand, Emma Chase's name lighting up the screen. I smiled despite my lingering sleepiness. Emma always had the juiciest pack gossip, and after yesterday's drama, I could use the distraction. Emma? I answered, stifling a yawn. How are you feeling? You're not going to believe what I just found out, Emma whispered excitedly, her voice so low I had to strain to hear her. I sat up straighter, immediately intrigued. What is it? It's about Marcus Winter and Jennifer Moore. You know, the pack's financial advisor who had his twins? I'm listening, I replied, my wolf Cora pricking her ears with interest beneath my skin. Emma took a deep breath before delivering her bombshell. Jennifer Moore is Grace Winter's maternal aunt. I nearly dropped my phone. What? Are you sure? Absolutely, Emma confirmed, her voice rushed and excited. She's the sister of Martha. You know, the rogue wolf servant who was involved in abandoning you as an infant after Lucas Gray orchestrated that attack. My mind raced, connecting the dots with alarming speed. No wonder Grace had such unusual influence within the Winter Pack. She'd secretly helped her aunt secure a position close to Marcus, likely facilitating their affair. She certainly knows how to distinguish between close and distant relationships, I remarked, keeping my voice deliberately calm and detached despite the rage bubbling up inside me. My wolf Cora stirred restlessly beneath my skin. This was more than just Grace's pettiness or jealousy. It was an intricate betrayal that spanned years, one that had infiltrated the very heart of the Winter Pack. That's not all, Emma continued gleefully. I anonymously passed this information to Sarah Winter via a burner phone message earlier this morning. You didn't, I gasped, both horrified and impressed by her audacity. I absolutely did, Emma confirmed. By now, the news should have reached the Winter Pack house. I could only imagine Sarah's fury at discovering not only that Grace had betrayed her by orchestrating an attack on her biological daughter, but that Grace had also helped position her own aunt to seduce Sarah's mate. The Winter Pack house must be in complete chaos. Sarah will be beside herself, I mused, strangely unmoved by the thought. After years of Sarah favoring Grace over me, witnessing her world crumble felt like justice, not tragedy. She deserves it. Emma stated flatly, after how they treated you? This is karma, Scarlett. I couldn't argue with that. The Winter Pack had made their choice long ago when they believed Grace's lies and cast me aside. Now they were reaping the consequences. Enough about them, I said, changing the subject. How was your night? Did you manage to rest after your fever? Emma's tone immediately shifted, the previous excitement replaced by nervous tension. I barricaded my door with every piece of furniture I could move, she admitted. I was terrified he'd come in again. Erik wouldn't hurt you, Emma, I reassured her, though I understood her fear. Erik Blackwood was intimidating even to wolves who had known him for years. We're clearly not on the same page, Emma scoffed. Your judgment regarding powerful alphas is questionable, Scarlett. I laughed despite myself. What's that supposed to mean? You're mated to Roman Thorn, Emma pointed out. Your perspective on dangerous is skewed beyond repair. Before I could respond, I heard a sharp intake of breath from Emma's end of the line. Someone's at my door, she whispered frantically. I have to go. The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at my phone with concern. I hoped Erik wasn't being too hard on her. Despite his cold exterior, I knew he wouldn't truly harm Emma, but his intimidating presence alone might be more than she could handle in her current state. Emma's POV. I hung up on Scarlett in a panic, clutching my phone to my chest as the sharp knock came again at my bedroom door. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst through. Miss Chase? Erik Blackwood's deep voice came through the heavy wood, each syllable precise and commanding. Are you awake? I swallowed hard, pressing myself against the headboard. My room looked ridiculous with the dresser, desk, and armchair all piled against the door, a futile barricade against an alpha who could probably break through with minimal effort if he chose to. I'm not hungry, I called out, trying to keep my voice steady despite my fear. There was a beat of silence before Erik replied, his tone chillingly calm. Come out. My wolf whimpered softly beneath my skin, instinctively responding to the alpha command in his voice. I pulled the blankets higher, as if the thin fabric could protect me from his authority. I said I'm not hungry, I repeated, my voice smaller this time. Please, I just want to rest. You have 5 minutes to come downstairs, Erik stated, his alpha authority radiating even through the barrier between us. The threat in his tone was unmistakable, making me shudder with dread. What would happen if I defied him? Would he force his way in? Would he drag me downstairs? The possibilities made my stomach clench with fear. Outside, I could hear muffled voices as other wolves approached. Through the door, I made out snippets of conversation, other pack members, presumably. Alpha, the European Council has requested your presence at... A male voice began. Not now. Erik cut him off sharply. I strained to hear more, but they lowered their voices, speaking in what sounded like a European dialect I couldn't understand. The only clear word was my name, Miss Chase, mentioned several times with what sounded like concern. My 5 minutes were ticking away, and I had no idea what to do. My instincts screamed to obey the Alpha's command, but my human pride and fear kept me frozen in place. Just yesterday, this man had seen me completely naked, had touched my fevered skin with clinical detachment. The memory alone made me want to disappear through the floor. Chapter 235, Dangerous Demands. Emma Chase clutched her blanket tightly against her chest, her knuckles whitening from the force of her grip. Her entire body trembled slightly despite the warmth of the European villa. Through the barricaded door, Erik Blackwood's commanding voice sent shivers down her spine. Miss Chase, your time is up, Erik stated coldly. You have 3 minutes to come downstairs. Emma buried her face deeper into the blanket. I told you, I'm not hungry, she called back, her voice small and pitiful compared to his authoritative tone. 3 minutes, he repeated, the alpha power in his voice leaving no room for argument. The silence that followed felt oppressive. Emma knew she couldn't defy him forever. Not in his own territory, not when he was one of the most feared alphas in the European territories. With a resigned sigh, she reluctantly pushed the blankets aside and swung her legs over the edge of the bed. This is ridiculous, she muttered to herself as she padded across the plush carpet toward the door. The barricade she had constructed the previous night, a desperate attempt at safety, now presented a new challenge. The heavy dresser, desk, and antique armchair that had seemed like such a brilliant protective measure were now obstacles between her and compliance with the Alpha's demands. Emma's stomach growled as she began pushing at the furniture. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, and her strength wasn't at its peak. The dresser barely budged an inch as she strained against it. Why are these so heavy? She whined, her arms already beginning to ache. Outside in the hallway, Erik leaned against the wall, listening to the sounds of struggling and furniture scraping across the floor. A smile, surprisingly gentle, curved his lips as he heard Emma's frustrated grunts and muttered complaints. Leo, passing by with a stack of documents, caught sight of the Alpha's expression and nearly dropped his papers in shock. He had never seen such a look on Erik's face before. Before Leo could process what he was seeing, Tristan appeared beside him, grabbing his arm firmly. "Come with me," Tristan ordered in a low voice, dragging Leo away from the scene and toward the study at the end of the hall. Once inside the study, Tristan closed the door behind them with a firm click. Malachi was already there, reviewing some security reports at the large oak desk. Leo couldn't contain his curiosity. "Is our Alpha?" he began, but Tristan's sharp glare silenced him momentarily. The momentary reprimand wasn't enough to deter Leo's curiosity. "Come on, Tristan," he pressed, keeping his voice low. "You're closer to the Alpha than any of us. Is it true what they say? About his inability?" Tristan's face darkened dangerously. "Are you capable?" he retorted, his wolf bristling beneath his skin at the disrespect toward their Alpha. "Or would you like the Alpha to personally investigate by crippling you?" Leo swallowed hard, but couldn't seem to stop himself. He turned to Malachi instead. "You've been with the Alpha longer than either of us? Have you ever seen him with a she-wolf? Is there any truth to the rumors?" Malachi deliberately avoided the question, reaching for his cigarette case and lighting one with meticulous care. The tension in the room was palpable as he took a long drag, his expression carefully neutral. "I'm just trying to help," Leo said defensively, noticing the skeptical glances exchanged between Tristan and Malachi. "If our Alpha has a problem, maybe we could find a solution. There are healers who specialize in such difficulties." "Leo," Malachi finally spoke, his voice weary, "if you value your life, never let the Alpha hear you discussing this topic." Back in her room, Emma finally managed to shove the last piece of furniture away from the door. She was panting, her forehead dotted with perspiration from the effort. When she pulled the door open, though, the hallway was empty. Erik had already gone downstairs. "Great," she muttered, quickly changing into fresh clothes. "Now he'll be even more annoyed with me." She hurried down the curved staircase, her heart pounding with each step. The main floor was imposingly grand, with high ceilings and large windows overlooking the European countryside. Emma spotted Erik immediately, his powerful figure impossible to miss as he sat on a leather sofa in the sitting area, phone pressed to his ear. Beyond him, in the adjoining dining room, a breakfast was already laid out. The scent of freshly baked bread and strong coffee wafted through the air, making Emma's stomach growl audibly. She approached the dining table hesitantly, glancing toward Erik to gauge his mood. His conversation appeared intense, his brow furrowed slightly as he spoke in rapid, fluid European dialect she couldn't understand. Emma quietly took a seat at the table, helping herself to the smallest portions possible. She didn't want to appear greedy, especially given Erik's comment yesterday about her being a big eater. She had just begun to eat when Erik ended his call and stood, approaching the dining area with measured steps. His amber eyes fixed on her with such intensity that Emma immediately ducked her head, burying her face in her bowl to avoid meeting his gaze. He was too intimidating, too dangerous, especially now that she knew how casually he had undressed her while she was unconscious. The memory of waking up naked made her wolf whimper beneath her skin. Erik took a seat across from her, his movements fluid and controlled. He reached into his pocket, producing an ornate silver case from which he extracted a cigarette. The flame briefly illuminated his sharp features as he lit it, taking a long drag before fixing her with that penetrating stare again. "Did you lock your door last night?" he asked abruptly. The question was so unexpected that Emma dropped her spoon, the metal clattering against the fine china bowl. Her cheeks flushed crimson as she fumbled to recover it. Yes, I did," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Erik tilted his head slightly, studying her like a particularly interesting specimen. "What did you think I might do to you?" Emma's blush deepened, spreading down her neck. "You said," she stammered, you told me yourself that you wouldn't be interested in someone like me." Something flickered in Erik's eyes, gone too quickly for Emma to interpret. He took another drag of his cigarette before speaking again, his voice firm and cold. "Starting tonight, it's not allowed," he declared. Emma's head snapped up, her eyes widening with shock. "What?" "Locking your door," Erik clarified, his expression impassive. "It's not allowed." A mixture of hurt and confusion washed over Emma's face. "Why?" she ventured, her voice small. Erik didn't answer, simply fixing her with that cold, unreadable stare that seemed to pierce straight through her. The silence stretched between them, heavy and oppressive, until Emma finally looked away. "Fine," she agreed reluctantly, thinking to herself that she needed to call Scarlett as soon as possible. Her friend had to help her escape from this situation. Erik tapped his cigarette against a crystal ashtray, dislodging the ash with a deliberate motion. "Finish your breakfast quickly," he instructed. "We need to go out." Emma nearly choked on her tea. "Go out?" she repeated nervously. "Where? Is it dangerous?" Erik considered her question for a moment before answering honestly. "It might be." The blood drained from Emma's face, her heart leaping to her throat. After the airport chase and the silver bullet confrontation in the car, the mere thought of facing more danger made her physically ill. She sat frozen for what felt like an eternity, her mind replaying the terrifying sounds of bullets striking metal, the scent of gunpowder and fear. When she finally regained her composure, her decision was firm. "I won't go," she stated, her voice steadier than she expected. Erik's eyebrows rose slightly, perhaps surprised by her direct refusal. "I'll guarantee your safety," he offered, his tone still clinical and detached. Emma shook her head vigorously. "I still don't want to go." The recent traumatic experiences with rogue wolves and silver bullets had left her deeply afraid. Death had never felt so close, so real, and she didn't trust Erik's guarantees. Not when Silver could be flying around her once again.